Hafaday, welcome to the Guam Congress Building. The Committee on Health, Land, Culture, and Justice is now called to order. Today's Friday, September 3rd, and the time is 4:05 p.m. Notice for this hybrid hearings was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Friday, August 27, and Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. The notice was also published in the Guam Daily Post on Friday, August 27, and again on Wednesday, September 1, 2021. All right, so this Zoom meeting, this is a hybrid meeting. We have in-person people here to testify and senators here in person, and we also have people who are going to be testifying by Zoom. And by the way, just so the public knows, all public hearings beginning September 6th will be held virtually. So we're trying to change as things change as well. All right, and so the host of the Zoom will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by the chair. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking. And please, everyone who's testifying, state your name for the record-keeping purposes before you testify. All right, we have two agenda items today. Bill number 180-36, introduced by James Moylan, Frank Blas Jr., Christopher M. Dueñas, an act to amend Section 19404 of Chapter 19, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the enforcement of orders related to citations, fines, and mandatory vaccines established by the Governor of Guam during a public health emergency. Second agenda item is Bill number 176-36 LS, introduced by Senator Frank Blas Jr., an act to amend Section 19603 of Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 19, Article 6, relative to vaccination and treatment during a declared state of public health emergency. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues with me here today, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Frank Blas Jr., and Minority Leader Senator Chris Dueñas, and Senator Terlaje, who's with us virtually. All right, so we will begin. All right, we're going to begin with Bill number 180-36. And by the way, so I did have a meeting with the governor today, a very short meeting with her and the mayor, the Chief Justice, and I did inform all of them about these hearings tonight in case they wanted to listen in on the testimony regarding the vaccine bills. All right, and so Bill number 180, we will have this introduced by the prime sponsor, who is Senator Moylan, but he's going to be, I guess Senator Frank Blas Jr. is going to act in his place tonight. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for being here tonight as well, and thank you to my colleagues. Senator Moylan apologizes for him not being here today. Bill 180-36 is a bill that basically, and it's very simply just says that if they're recognizing that, the island in its current state right now, we are going through a current health crisis. However, what this bill proposes is that in the establishment of any fines or any penalties that will come about as a result of not following the governor's executive orders, that this includes, whether or not you follow the governor's executive orders, or whether it comes to the issue of vaccinations, that the impositions of these penalties or wanting to put these mandates in place should come before this body, the Guam legislature, for discussion, deliberation in behalf of the people of Guam, and that it can proceed if it receives a majority vote from the members of this legislature. Okay, there has been, since the introduction of this bill and any other bills, there has been many concerns raised by individuals on the mandates and on certain provisions or certain orders put out by the executive order. that have raised concern from individuals, everything from individual rights to whether or not, in fact, whether it contradicts law or is unconstitutional. I don't think that there's anybody in this room nor on this island that wants to see us get through this pandemic. But at the same time, there are individuals that have grave concerns as to how these mandates and how these orders are placed, and would like, their voices heard in the discussion and the formulation of what these mandates and what these orders will be. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'm going to join you in being able to listen to public testimony on this bill and others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. So we will begin now accepting testimony. I'd ask that you keep your testimony to 5 minutes just because we have a lot of people signed up to testify. And after each panel, I'm going to ask the senators if they have any questions, but I'm just going to let the senators know that we do have, I don't have the exact number with me right now, but I think there's at least 20 people signed up to testify. So just bear that in mind. All right, so we have, we did invite the Department of Public Health and Social Services, the Office of the Attorney General of Guam, the Governor's Physician Advisory Group, the Guam Chamber of Commerce, Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, the Guam Federation of Teachers Union, formally to provide testimony. We received, the fiscal impact note on this bill is still pending by BBMR. And we did get some legal review on this bill from our own legal bureau. All right, so now we will proceed. First, we have Michael, Henry, and Vincent Rudolph. So I understand it's you and your 2 children. All right, so Mr. Rudolph, you may begin.
Is it working? All right. Is it okay if I comment on both bills at the same time?
Sure, we'll accept that.
All
yes.
right, thank you. Okay. My name is Michael Rudolph, a resident of Sinahanya. I am here in my individual capacity to comment on Bills 176, 180, and urge the legislature to end the public emergency. I have edited both bills and tracked the changes. My edited versions have been submitted in advance of this hearing as written testimony. At this time, I will summarize my suggestions. Bill 180. This bill lacks a provision that would require a vaccine to be unconditionally approved by the FDA. A mandated vaccine should be approved, not conditionally approved or authorized for emergency use. Bill 176 has this provision, and I thank the author of that bill for making the distinction. Both bills lack 2 solid provisions that, 1, include a person's right to decline vaccination without fear of imprisonment, isolation, segregation, retaliation, sanctions, fines, or access to government services through exemptions to include, but not limited to, reasons of health, religion, conscience, or privacy. 2, a waiver of the government of Guam's protections under the Sovereign Immunity Government Claims Act and the Malpractice Mandatory Arbitration Act. If the government is going to force medical treatment, then people deserve recourse without limitations in the event they suffer adverse side effects from mandated treatment. I appreciate the attempts made by the authors of these bills. However, these bills are dilatory measures. We've been under a public emergency for about 1.5 years now. After that length of time, it is no longer an emergency. It is a way of life that must end. The governor is sitting atop a mountain of federal cash to be used to bolster our rehabilitation from the effects of this virus. During this 1.5 years, the governor could have built a satellite facility to GMH. Instead, she pitched a tent and kept the money. The argument that we don't want to overburden our hospitals no longer holds water at this time. There has been ample time to prepare for the variants. The only responsible action the legislature should take is to introduce what is commonly known as the Bob and Ray Resolution. You all should have copies. This resolution invokes your authority under 10 GCA Section 19405C, which provides the ability to terminate the declaration of the state of public health emergency at any time. This will end the mandated vaccines and send our kids back to school. You have to control to end this tyranny. It is unfortunate that you need to be reminded of it. Introduce the Bob and Ray Resolution. I am making this statement before you now. If the resolution or one with the same effect is not introduced, you will not receive my vote. If a resolution is introduced, anyone who votes against it, you will not receive my vote. I will encourage everyone I know to do the same. Take the gloves off. Leave your delicate political sensibilities at home. It is time that the people of Guam, my family, and my children get their freedom back. Stop the perception that you, the legislature, go about your day repeating, "Maga haga may I." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. And next we'll have, is it Henry or Vincent? Please introduce yourself. Say your name. You can go.
My name is Vincent Rudolph. I am in 5th grade. I was in school for 2 weeks, and now school gets canceled for 2 or 3 weeks. Now I don't even get to see my friends at school because the governor cancels face-to-face. When school was open, I felt like I was told what to do more than usual, more than I should be. When school was open, there was no PE or anything at all. Nothing to get the fat kids to actually do something. There was no recess. We had only been outside once in the whole 2 weeks, and that outside playing around is the only way the fat kids can get any exercise, and we only have 6 hours at home. We didn't learn anything about John Adams or anyone like him. We learned about atmospheres, but that took more than a week, and for some reason we were still on the atmospheres. Most of the people who die of COVID have health problems or were already sick when they had COVID. You're not allowing people who aren't vaccinated in the gym to get exercise to prepare for Corona. I support this bill, including the legislature, so that people aren't just punished into getting the vaccine, and so that the people's opinions are heard. And I think that the legislature is the holy water against the vampire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. You may proceed. The other Mr. Rudolph. Please state your name. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Henry Lujan Rudolph. I am 12 years old, and I live in Sinahanya. What I think about the vaccine is I don't trust it, but I could see why people do. But mandating it isn't smart. There are people that are vaccinated that are still in the hospital, and her mandating that you have to inject something into your body that does not even work isn't smart. Also, when you find it's all because we didn't conform to your beliefs, it is a way of establishing fear and starting a dictatorship. Same thing that Hitler did, constantly destroying the people's and the youth health in general is not caring about our safety. It is lying, especially when you act and think like a childish brat and make decisions like someone trying to type with a cat on their keyboard. Not exposing us to people is destroying our social health. Now, when you have everything in the world, it is easy to make these kind of decisions. When a man does not have a father in the house, nor any guys at the school, not exposing a man to perspective, nor a man's problems and dangers, means that that is not a man. Now, when you do this with people in general, you're making it 10 times worse. Forcing vaccines upon a weakened and scared people is dictator-like. Also, when people are scared, they don't think straight. This is coming from a 7th grader, a child. Also, this bill is actually really good. I like it. That removes the Hitler stuff I was talking about. She's taken my school, my gyms, my friends, which is a form of family to me. No wonder I'm coming in here and talking about her like she's the worst person in the world. Bring back the schools, stop enforcing these ridiculous policies that don't even work. The preachers of these policies don't even practice it. Legislature, come on, take some action. You have the opportunity and ability to stop this insanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. We will now hear from Lillian Posadas, the GMH Administrator.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Brown, Senator Frank Blas, and Senator Chris Dueñas, and Senator Terlaje, and whoever else is in the Zoom. Thank you for this opportunity. Buenas Day. My name is Lillian Posadas. I am the hospital administrator. And as a healthcare professional and a registered nurse with over 40 years in not only clinical nursing practice, but also in nursing leadership, in management, in academic and education, and now in my current position, overseeing the entire operations of our only public hospital, I'm here before you to testify in opposition of this proposed legislation. We are fighting a battle here, an invisible battle, the virus, to fight amongst each other. You know, because, again, a few think that their rights, their freedom, the individual rights is being impacted. It's not about individual rights. It's about our communal responsibility, our communal duty to protect the health and the safety of our island community, not just individual health and safety, but the entire island. I see these patients on a daily basis, and so do other doctors, and so do other nurses and other health care workers in the hospital. We are the ones receiving these COVID-infected individuals into the hospital. And we're also now seeing more children, a month-old, a 7-month-old, an 11-year-old, children under 12 who are not eligible for the vaccine. They're coming into the hospital sick. Is that what you want to continue to see? That these children, there are more children out there. Unfortunately, they're not that sick to come into the hospital, but they are seen in the clinic. And that's what we're trying to prevent as a community, is to protect the health and the safety of those individuals who are more vulnerable, who are not eligible to receive the vaccine. It is in complete opposition to what our healthcare workers in the clinical and non-clinical operations of the hospital, what we've been battling as frontliners to stand up the care and services for individuals infected with COVID. Many of us healthcare workers, we risk our lives to provide the care, to ensure we keep the hospital open and operating as safely and efficiently as we can, to ensure we have the staff we need. What happens if these nurses also are so tired and doctors are so tired and they quit? Who's going to take care of the patients that come in? There is credible empirical scientific evidence that this vaccine is effective and safe. I got vaccinated because I want to make sure that I am safe and available to show up to work, to encourage and support our hospital employees, to give them some clarity and some certainty that although this COVID virus is frightening and unpredictable, we have a weapon, and that is the vaccine. To legislate the vaccine, whether it's the COVID vaccine or any other vaccine or any medication, is not within the legislature's control or expertise. The mandatory is not a forced vaccine. Individuals are still allowed to declare their inability or unwillingness to undergo vaccination for reasons of health, religion, or conscience. However, in doing so, they will be subject to weekly testing so that to prevent the spread of this contagious, possibly other contagious disease. Just like a driver's license. We're all mandated, we're all required to have a driver's license. Some of us choose not to have it, because that's our right, right? But if we get caught on the road by the police, they cite us. They give us a citation. They give us a ticket. That's the consequence of what we have to face when we exercise our freedom, when we exercise our individual right, that we don't want a driver's license. There are consequences. So our job really, our role, our responsibility is to prevent and to protect the health of our society, of our island community, not just our individual rights. Public health already has the authority and the jurisdiction to isolate or quarantine individuals. That's already instituted. My husband got vaccinated so that he is protected. Our son and his girlfriend also got vaccinated so that they protect themselves, and in doing so, they are protecting us, his elderly parents. While I appreciate and understand the intent of this legislation, this epic COVID battle is not about an individual or personal freedom and right to declare one's inability or unwillingness to vaccinate for reasons of health, religion, or conscience. Again, it's about our communal duty and responsibility to protect the health and safety of our island community, especially those who cannot or do not meet the age criteria for vaccination. We all have a moral obligation to do what is best for the greater good of our society. Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. Thank you, Senator Frank Blas, and all senators present at this hearing for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with regards to this proposed legislation. Equally appreciated is the open forum to engage in a deliberate and respectful dialogue. Jesus Masi.
Jesus Masi, Ms. Posadas, may I ask if your testimony is for Bill 180 and Bill 176, or?
I focused primarily on Bill 176, but I did go a little bit on the 180 because, the mandated and the fines.
All right.
And what I said was, just giving an analogy of the driver's license.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Because of what we're finding here, Senator Blas, that people want to testify on both bills, maybe I'm going to ask you to please introduce the second bill so that we have that all on the table, if you could bear with us, and that way their testimony will be relevant. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Speaker, Bill 176 is an act to amend subsection 19603 of, and it has to be corrected here. It's basically, it's supposed to be Title 10. Okay, with Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 19, Article 6, relative to vaccination and treatment during a declared state of public health emergency. Madam Speaker, what this provides is that we recognize that in the governor's executive powers, emergency powers, that there is a section there, and the governor has the ability to be able to order vaccination, treatment, and quarantine. However, what the bill proposes to provide is that if the vaccine is going to be administered, the vaccine has to be unconditionally approved and not an emergency use authorization by the Food and Drug Administration. And so, what the bill recognizes is that, yes, if you want to be able to mandate it, we've got to make sure that the vaccine that you are going to want to mandate, that you're going to want to be able to use as the vaccination, is not one that it's still subject to experiment or an emergency use. It has to be unconditionally approved, which basically means it has to go through the phases, to the processes that have been set up by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to be able to provide, some sense, the sense of security that's necessary. I liken this to the 1-minute commercial you see on in television for Excedrin. 20 seconds of why Excedrin is good for you and 40 seconds of why it's not. Okay? That's basically, what this will provide. If you can provide that unconditionally approved vaccination, and right now there's the discussion as to whether or not Pfizer, or it's now, what is it called now? Comirnaty. Whether that is fully approved, then the question is arisen of what of Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines that are still emergency use authorization. So again, it just provides a sense, a level of security, a level of confidence for the kind of vaccine that is going to be administered during a state of emergency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. If you don't mind, I'm going to read the actual amendment. It's very short. So in the Health Powers chapter, section 1960, Emergency Health Powers chapter, chapter 19 of Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, in section 19603, subsection 2, it currently reads, a vaccine to be administered must not be such as is reasonably likely to lead to serious harm to the affected individual. The language to be added will now make subsection 2 read, a vaccine to be administered must be unconditionally approved, not emergency use authorization by the United States Food and Drug Administration, and not be such as is reasonably likely to lead to serious harm to the affected individual. That's Bill 176. Bill 180, this is a refresher since we're going to handle both bills now. Bill 180 affects section 19404 of the same chapter 19, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated. And it will change a current statute that currently reads enforcement. During a state of public health emergency, the Public Health Authority may request assistance in enforcing orders pursuant to this chapter from the Public Safety Authority. The Public Safety Authority may request assistance from the organized militia in enforcing the orders of the Public Health Authority. And the new sentence to be added will read, notwithstanding any other provisions of the law, rule, or regulation to the contrary, any order from the governor which establishes citations or fines for those who violate a governor's executive order pursuant to this chapter, or any order from the governor which mandates the requirement of vaccinations for government employees, private businesses, and their patrons, also pursuant to this chapter, shall be approved by the Guam legislature by majority vote. So those are the two changes being proposed in two separate bills. All right, thank you again, Senator Blas, and we will proceed. Thank you again to those who've testified. Are there any questions for those who've testified so far? Because I did put Ms. Posadas up ahead of the line just so that I could get her back to the hospital if necessary. And if there's any questions, Senator Dueñas.
Cedars Mossy, Madam Chair, and Lillian, thank you for being here. I can say, I think for our entire body, there's no question our appreciation for all healthcare workers and everything that's being done during this time of this pandemic. So I just have two questions because I think it's important. Your position was clear. But recently we had the resignation of the Physicians Advisory Group chairperson. And in many of his comments, he has indicated that there is not unanimity within the health community on this issue, and that particularly mandating vaccinations is something that has not proven to have the efficacy of the desired outcome in his professional opinion. So I would take it that you do not concur with the former PAG chair.
If I could reiterate what you're asking, the mandatory vaccine,
Right.
from the perspective of the previous PAG chair?
Correct. In his resignation and his discussion openly in the media, he has made it clear that his position and disagreement with the governor when it comes to mandating vaccines, that his position and his advice was that is divisive and it is not particularly in line with the strategy to fight the virus. So I'm just asking you, you mentioned that in your testimony that is representative of the medical community, but I'm pointing out, I believe there's very differing opinions within the medical community. So I'm just asking you on the record, do you disagree with the statements made by the former PAG chair?
Well, again, from my own experience, I see that the mandatory, 97% of our employees in the hospital are vaccinated. And so it's proven to be effective. It may not necessarily prevent you from getting the COVID, but at least it minimizes the acuity and the severity of if you do get it. What we're seeing right now with individuals in the hospital, although they are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, they still come back or they come into the hospital with COVID positive tests. They're not requiring ventilator support. Unlike last year, when we didn't have the vaccine, their respiratory conditions were so compromised, many of them had to be on ventilator support. We're not seeing that right now, knock on wood. They still have shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, but with the interventions of proning and supplemental high-flow nasal cannula oxygen, supplemental oxygen, that has helped them get through that phase of their respiratory condition. So mandatory vaccine is effective and it's safe, it's working. It's not just here, it's globally. It's, you know, there are places in the mainland that have mandatory vaccine and has worked. The ones that are hospitalized in the mainland are the unvaccinated.
What was your vaccination rate prior to it being mandatory, and what was it tracking?
Prior to when?
What was your vaccination rate within your employees at the hospital prior to it becoming mandatory, and what was it tracking?
We were running around probably 50 to 60%, or even 70% prior to it being mandatory.
Because most agencies that have been reporting are in the 80s and even higher. This was without mandatory. So I just was curious about that.
Right.
Sure.
Well, yeah, there are people who, in the hospital, there are people who choose not to. They don't want to because of their health condition. Some of them have cancer health conditions and they're immunocompromised, but they continue to work. And so for those reasons, they felt that they were fearful in getting the vaccine.
So I guess my final question is, and this is one that I've heard from the medical community as well, is that obviously you've stated, and it actually was stated in the media today, that there's close to 40% of the hospitals combined of vaccinated individuals that are there. And I say this for the listening public too, because I don't think that this has been stated heavily enough from many in the medical community that there's really no difference at this point from the vaccinated or unvaccinated individuals in terms of community spread. And so this is why I think it's very important, because you know the divisiveness that exists within this policy basically does not bear out because of the fact that the transmission of vaccinated individuals as well as individuals, who are currently hospitalized. So I just wanted to get a comment from you on that.
If I may point also, the number of deaths have not been that rampant compared to last year without the vaccine. And so, as I mentioned, these individuals who do come into the hospital with the vaccination, their acuity and severity of their respiratory condition is not as bad as last year without the vaccine.
I'm certain that everyone that has decided to make that personal decision is happy and satisfied with that outcome for themselves. But what I'm trying to say is that it also is, at this point in time, factual that individuals who are transmitting as a vaccinated individual. And so acuity, deaths, I say this as a COVID survivor. I have medical advice to refrain at this point, and my immunity is strong at this point, thank God. But I'm saying that those might be other reasons as well why other individuals are making these choices. So I appreciate your testimony. I just wanted to make sure on the record that we understand, and you would at least concur that the medical community is not 100% united on this issue.
Medical community is not always 100% united in many other issues. They all have varying perspectives, varying, insights and training and schools of thought. And so it's not just on this, but on many other issues, just like lawyers. Lawyers also have different perspectives, and they may not necessarily come together, on a united.
I'm just glad that the top medical guy before said that he doesn't want to divide our
Thank you,
community
Senator.
and gives individual choice. Thank you,
Senator,
Lillian. I
okay, we're going to
appreciate it.
limit this round to just questions for the hospital administrator, if there are any. Are there any others from senators here? Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Ms. Posadas, for being here. And I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate your passion and what you're doing. The question I have here, and for a lot of times, really not talking about the vaccine and the effectiveness and everything. What we're talking about here is the individual's ability to be able to choose. Okay? And quite honestly, it's the mandate and the manner of which they were forced to choose. Okay? I think that, as you stated earlier, your vaccination rate at the hospital prior to the mandate was hovering between 50 and 60%, but those individuals made that choice. What is being addressed primarily in both these bills is that freedom of choice, that ability to make that informed decision so that they're comfortable with making the decision. It has got nothing to do with, and as far as the vaccine, there are many individuals that I've spoken to on this matter. So I guess my concern here is that, please, we recognize that while your concern is on basically the effectiveness of the vaccine, is what your feeling and your thought of mandating the vaccine as opposed to what we were utilizing before, and in highly encouraging individuals and providing them the information and the ability, the accessibility to get these vaccines, okay, in the position of not the vaccine, but on the mandate.
The mandate really is to help the larger community reach that 80% so we could have herd immunity. That was really one of the reasons why we wanted to encourage. The only way to encourage is to have it mandatory. But again, it's not forcing anybody. You do have the right to say, well, I don't want to do it because for my health reasons, for my religious reasons, or because I just don't want, it's my freedom. Okay, that's fine, we're not forcing you. But there are consequences because, again, to prevent the spread of infection, we are going to then test you so that if you do have the COVID infection, we're going to isolate you or quarantine you. But again, it's not a forced vaccination.
Well,
mandatory.
Isn't it scientifically shown already, too, that those who have been vaccinated can also continue to contract and spread the virus?
There is data.
So why isn't then there a mandate for those that are still vaccinated to also get weekly tested?
For some people, everybody's different. Our immune systems are different. Okay, so even if I have the COVID, I can still get it.
Yes.
But it is also recommended by CDC to go ahead and get the vaccine, even though I've had the COVID. I can still get it to build my immunity because my immune system may not be as strong as yours, Senator Dueñas. You say you have a strong immune system. My system may not be. For one thing, my age, I do have underlying medical conditions. And so yes, CDC recommends that you can still get the vaccination even though you've had the COVID infection.
Okay, but again, it goes back to the question, if now, because of the new variant or what we're finding, is that even if those who are vaccinated, those that have been vaccinated, then there's another thing about the efficacy of the vaccination. But if they've been vaccinated, they can still contract it and still spread it. What is the whole reason for people to get vaccinated? What has been the policy of this government?
To build the immune system, to build the immunity level
I thought
as much as we can.
I thought it was initially get the vaccine so that you can stop, so that you don't contract COVID and you don't spread it.
Well, that's what we believe the scientists, but this Delta virus mutates. This virus mutates. It changes. Just like the flu. Every year we're supposed to get a flu vaccine, but every year there's a different type of a virus for the flu. So even though you do get the flu vaccine, you can still get the flu.
So are you going to allude to saying that then you get the COVID vaccine, now you're going to have to get a booster every year? And you're going to mandate that?
The flu is already mandated for health professionals to get the flu vaccine, but not every health professional takes the flu vaccine.
Okay.
They exercise their rights.
I think, Madam
they're
Speaker, we can
not,
go on more
you
of a
know?
question, but for the purposes of other people who want to testify too, I'll go ahead and thank you very much. Okay?
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
I'd ask the senators to limit their statements. I know we want to debate and have our own statements. We will allow time for that, but for the questioning period, if we could just keep them very limited to those who are actually testifying, questions for those particular people, and so we can allow everybody. Senator Brown, do you have questions for the hospital administrator or the,
I will keep it short, Madam
Rudolphs.
Speaker, but I did want to ask Ms. Posadas, with regards to the, we had the presentation earlier this afternoon by Public Health in terms of profiling the patients that are currently up at the hospital right now and the spike that we've just recently seen this past month. What are you finding out in terms of the duration of the timelines that individuals are staying at the hospital once they've been admitted for both vaccinated and unvaccinated patients?
Thank you for that question, Senator. It varies. It varies on each patient's condition, each patient's age, each patient's respiratory situation, whether they still need to be on supplemental oxygen. It just varies. We have one individual who was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So again, it really varies on the individual. It's a case by case.
And what capacity level do you have at the hospital? How much is the maximum amount of patients you're able to accommodate there?
Okay. When we restructured all the beds last year, we were able to have 160 beds for COVID patients. We still had some beds that we needed to have for non-COVID patients, but collectively, we can accommodate up to 160 patients. In the ICU, though, we're limited. For the ICU intensive care unit, we have the 14-bed, plus we also have another 4-bed unit called the Care 2. So 18 beds for intensive care unit COVID patients. We have on the 3rd floor and on the 4th floor an additional 24 beds in the telemetry, 20 beds in the 4th floor pediatric units. We also have in the med-surg annex some of the beds. So, we have restructured that hospital to make sure we have the number of beds that we can accommodate. We have the Blue Med tent right now that was set up yesterday as an overflow for the ER. And that has a capacity of 8 additional stations or fast beds for when people come into the emergency room who have COVID positive, and we have already full in the area of the physical structure of our ER, we put them into the Blue Med tent.
I appreciate it. I know there's going to be a lot of people to testify, but I certainly appreciate your time coming here this afternoon to provide us with the information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
thank you very much, Senator Brown. Senator Taitui, did you have any questions for the hospital administrator or the Rudolphs?
No, I don't, Madam Speaker. And I thank Guam Memorial for being here today to testify, as well as the others who testified
Thank you.
before her.
Thank you very much. Senator, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next person, Mr. Lisangan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Free Lin Sagan. Well, the point here, we're missing the point. The point here is the legislature has no authority to interfere with the emergency or executive power of the governor. Pursuant to Organic Act of Guam, the governor shall have the power to issue executive orders and regulations not in conflict with any applicable law. Now, I agree with you. I'm against vaccination mandate, but this is not the right body to address this. If you are not satisfied or you don't agree with the governor, then the next body, the court, you instruct the AG to file a lawsuit against the governor if you believe that it is in conflict with any law. And of course, it's in conflict because in our Bill of Rights, we have the life of liberty. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or due process. And then no excessive fines, because the executive order, the fine that they implemented is too high for the businesses. And then you have the right to privacy, the 9th Amendment. But there are precedent-setting cases that was heard by the court, and the court made the ruling favoring the governor or the state for some mandate, mass mandate, vaccine mandate. The reason is this: you people don't have the authority or the right, you don't have the right to put other people's health at risk. That's the ruling. We speak about all our constitutional rights, but those people that will be affected, you're putting them at risk. That's what the judge said. Now, we are in a different situation. Maybe the judge will reconsider if they will make this argument. Let's check the data. The data now is very clear. 47.2% of vaccinated people are also in the hospital catching COVID. That's our argument now. So it means the vaccine mandate is not needed. You know, I'm not a doctor, but I have a degree in BA, Bachelor of Science, or diploma in major in chemistry. And we do a lot of analysis, laboratory testing. You know, we analyze a lot. That's why in bills like this, you need to analyze, especially this virus. There's a lot of unknown. Even the doctors, the scientists, they have different opinion. In fact, one of the PhD doctor of medicine, he is a biostatistician and epidemiologist, Dr. Martin Kulldorff. He stated the idea that everyone must be vaccinated against COVID-19 is as misguided as the anti-vax idea that no one should. Yes, but he agreed that by vaccinating older people, the country has saved thousands of lives. Yes, but for the young one, for younger adults and children, it is a different story, as their mortality risk is extremely low. Now, if you watch the news in CNN, there's some nurses in California protesting against vaccine mandate. You know, and I sentiment with them. I agree that it shouldn't be vaccine mandate. It should be people's choice. But I got vaccinated because I don't want to be quarantined if I travel. You know, and that's the whole point. This is not the right forum. I agree with your intention, but you don't have intention in the bill. Your intention is to eliminate, to revoke the vaccine mandate. And the other part that I don't like from the executive order is testing the government workers almost every week if they don't want to be vaccinated. You know, there's a lot of stress. And you know, the weapon against COVID is a strong immunity system. If you are depressed, you know, if you are angry, it all contributes to low immune system. That's why, and besides, the data is very clear here in Guam. I recommend vaccine because, just like Mrs. Posadas said, only 25 deaths this year for COVID, but last year, 125. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much,
But
Mr.
how about another bill? Another bill of by Senator Blas. You want me to make a statement?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Well, your other bill is, this is a contradiction of your bill because you are fighting for freedom. You are fighting for persons' rights. But now, you don't want people to get the vaccine or any vaccine if it's not FDA approved, if it's only under emergency authorization. You know, it saves a lot of lives. We have to accept it. We have to accept it and let the people decide if they want to take it, whether if it's not FDA approved, just like the doctor. Sometimes it's not their specialty, but they have to treat the patient. They have to consult with the specialist in the mainland, or else what will happen with the patient? If they cannot get a specialty, there's nothing in the island. Just like the old saying goes, what's the use of the grass or the hay if the horse or the carabao is dead? Thank you.
Mr. Lasangan, thank you.
I mean, to add some humor. Humor is against, COVID-19 too. Can I go now?
Yes, you may. All right. We'll now hear from Clara Calvo. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Buenas and half a day, Speaker Terlaje, Senator Brown, Senator Blas, Senator Dueñas, and Senator Terlaje. My name is Clara Calvo, and I'm thankful to provide my testimony in support of Bill 180. Over the past 2 decades, I have practiced thorough due diligence in regards to my health and wellness. This has been my life's work. I became ill over 20 years ago from IBS, inflammatory colon, then polycystic ovaries, among other health issues. Since then, it's been my mission to share what I've learned through my greatest teacher, and that's experience. I made the decision to take an integrative approach, and it was not an easy road, nor was there a singular treatment in healing. It involved me changing my diet, my lifestyle, my belief system, my very being. And since moving back home to Guam in 2004, I've shared what I had learned, and a lot of that is basically taking accountability and ownership for our own health and wellness. Of course, seeking professional help when needed, but first and foremost, taking responsible steps in caring for ourselves. I have utmost respect for medical doctors, nurses, all frontliners, and I also respect our cirujanos, nutritionists, functional, integrative, holistic doctors and counselors, and all whose lives are about health and wellness care. There has been a lack of promotion and discussion of the importance of nutrition, hydration, alkalinity, vitamins and minerals, diaphragmatic breathing, spending time in nature, exercise, connecting with loved ones, and other means of care throughout this pandemic. Instead, we have been inundated with discriminatory propaganda, fear tactics, divisive measures which only make our island that much more toxic and unhealthy. This is not a pandemic of the unvaccinated. I am not vaccinated, and I know what's best for my body. I'm the one who's lived in this body for 47 years, through sickness and health, through vitality and depression, and even through sexual violation, which is basically being forced to do something I did not want to do. So to think that we can just eat and drink chemical-laden, highly processed foods, sit indoors, void of nature and movement, yet get this vaccine and somehow be less susceptible to this virus and have a superior immune system is delusional, and it goes against the very definition of health and wellness. According to the CDC, the epidemic of obesity is greatly impacting the severity of COVID-19 pandemic, with stress-related conditions weighing in as the second biggest factor. To me, this poses more of a risk than to be without this injection of mRNA and spike proteins. There has been no public platform discussing both sides of this emergency use experimental investigational injection. Medical professionals who oppose the mainstream narrative are censored and silenced. My inflammatory condition years ago were not acute symptoms. They were subacute and long-term symptoms from toxic exposure. I understand that there are risks in everything in life, and I also understand that it's my right as an autonomous being to weigh out my risks and make my own informed consent. We are all in this together. Everyone just wants to maintain their health. However, there's no one-size-fits-all. Chemotherapy doesn't work for everyone. Radiation doesn't work for everyone. Each patient is guided and directed by their medical team, but they're also guided and directed by their conscience, and in the end, the patient makes their own choice. It's medical freedom. And so why is this any different? Why am I subject to discrimination because I choose a different way in keeping my immune system strong and my overall constitution healthy? I'm a business owner, and we have followed all the health and safety protocols. We kept our business at 50% capacity even when we were told that we could open up to full capacity. Our business is a place of fitness, health, and wellness, and people come to us for their physical, mental, and emotional health. And because I choose to follow my conscience and my dialogue with God, I'm dictated to stay away from my business unless I submit an exemption form and have weekly testing. In closing, I am attaching my religious exemption, and I also brought a stack of my medical documents over the years with documentation and a map of Guam's dump sites and Superfund sites, where these same chemicals that were in my blood and other harmful radioactive chemicals are found to be in high concentration and considered to be cancer cluster areas. I included documents displaying health disparities linked to neurotoxicity, autoimmune disease, and inflammatory diseases. Our island has already been violated, stored, and dumped with toxic chemicals that have leached into our soil, our air, and our water, and vaporized into our air. And I only bring this up because we are products of our environment. And I cannot complacently sit aside and allow this to further happen to my body or my sons. My son is why I am doing this, for my son and all the children who live with the decisions that we make right now today. I look to my parents, my grandparents, and to our elders and all that they stood for, what they went through for us to be here and enjoy this freedom today. I respect everyone's choice in how they decide to live their lives, conventional or not, natural or not, vaccinated or not. It all comes down to choice. This is about our freedom of choice, and of all things, the freedom of our medical choice. Si Diyos masi.
Si Diyos masi. I'm going to ask senators if they have questions for this panel. We have, again, over 20 people signed up to testify, so if we could just keep it very limited. Any questions for this panel? Senator Blas.
First off, I just want to thank the Rudolph clan. You know, sir, you raised some very exceptional sons with this. And I forgot, Mr. Rudolph, your first name again? I'm sorry, Michael? Was it Mike?
Henry?
Henry, thank you very much. You're very articulate for a 12-year-old, and I very much appreciate that. You know, Henry, have you had discussions? You said you're a 12-year-old right now, right? Have you ever had discussions with your friends on this issue, and what is their take on it?
I've never really talked to them about this. I was too busy messing around in class.
Okay.
And
Well, I want to thank you. It's very impressive that you two gentlemen took the time to be able to submit your testimony. And it weighs a lot, especially because this is about you. So I want to thank you very much. Thank you again, once again, sir.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Dueñas, any questions for this panel?
Just Masi, and I want to thank the Rudolphs as well as everybody else who's testified. Clara, I think it's important to get you to expand. My basic question is, you know, you mentioned, you know, the effect that it's having on your business and your ability to carry out your freedom, your ability to make a living, your ability to also have others around you who feel the same way. What is the consensus of your patrons and those who have been on this journey with you for a long time, and what does it really mean? I think this panel needs to understand that in terms of what rights mean and what it means to you and those who you served with and who you've gone through this journey in life with.
Thank you for your question, Senator Dueñas. It has been heartbreaking for me to leave. I pretty much have stepped away from my business because I'm not vaccinated. My partners are. We have had staff really in tears asking us if they could still teach. We've had members who have come to us for 17 years and I feel horrible turning them away because it's not just their physical health. With exercise, especially yoga, it's a mental, emotional, and physical practice. And, you know, I just had a friend commit suicide 2 months ago. And this pandemic is not just about our physical health, it's about our mental and emotional health. And people, believe it or not, they come to the gym, they exercise, they go to 21-day detox. These things help them, not just physically, but we're holistic beings. It helps them mind, body, and spirit. So it feels, you know, I have to separate myself from Synergy for now, and I understand it's just brick and mortar. I could do what I can on Zoom and whatnot, but I feel more so, I'm lucky enough that I don't have to be there, but I feel for my staff and instructors who don't have that privilege. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'm not going to debate, I'm not going to carry on, but this is the essence of what some of these things mean sometimes. Mandatory issues. I mean, they have an effect on people who are doing everything that they can for themselves, and it's just not right. Susmasi.
Susmasi, Senators. Senator Brown, any questions for the panel?
Not so much a question. I'm not going to belabor too long because I know there's others to testify, but I do appreciate all of you, for the Rudolph family, Claire, for you coming, and Mr. Lin Sagan, who was here a little earlier, for providing your testimony. I think it's important. I mean, we're all going through challenging times, and I think we certainly want to look at this pandemic in the rearview mirror at some point soon. But I think while we're going through these challenging times, it's critically important to get the input of our people. I think it's one of the few forums. At least we can provide that here in the House of the People, to be able to hear your concerns and your issues with regards to this pandemic and how we as a government are going about imposing these requirements on our community. I think our people should have the right to determine their level of care within their respective families. So thank you for bringing forth your views and your comments and your position with regards to these issues that are before us today. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. And I think for the rest of our community to hear what you have to say is also very important. So thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitagui, any questions for this panel?
None at this time, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate those who came to testify, especially Claire, a person who truly believes in the natural process of healing, as well as in ensuring that the body is met with good things that go inside the body. And something that's not been approved right now, I can understand the anxiety that many of you're feeling and many other people are feeling too as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you again to the panel, and you may leave either this way or this way. And again, thank you very, very much. While we're waiting for the next panel, I'd just like to reiterate that masks must remain on at all times. Please maintain 6 feet distance in the hallways. Please limit your testimony to 5 minutes. We have 24 people left to testify. And please specify whether you are in favor or against Bill 180 and also Bill 176, as we have combined both hearings in one. All right, we're going to call for the second panel, Director Art San Augustine, Chief Daniel Stone, Chief Stephen Ignacio, Tony Young de Gracia, Sean McManus, and Debbie Staley. All right. If we're ready, then we will begin. We will begin with, in place of Director Art San Augustine is Deputy Director Terry Uggan. Deputy Director Uggan, you may begin. Oh, please put the microphones, if you don't mind, straight level at your mouth, not higher, because it's very hard to hear that way. Thank you.
So buenas and half a day. My name is Terry Uggan. I'm the Deputy Director for the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Buenos Senators Blas, Moylan, and Dueñas, and members of the 36th Guam legislature. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced global response. Its easy spread has been aided by delayed and uncoordinated global responses, insufficient containment measures, and the fact that infected people can transmit the virus even in the absence of symptoms. Personal responsibilities and decisions leadership have proven that critical milestones such as herd immunity can attain. Even with this success, we cannot forget the 150 souls lost to this pandemic. To help continue saving lives, the Department of Public Health and Social Services remains vigilant in fighting COVID-19 by containing the spread of SARS-CoV-2. The public health response depends upon the use of approved FDA and EUA devices and drugs. Emergency use authorizations defined. An emergency use authorization under Section 564 of the Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act allows for the special use of drugs and other medical products during certain types of emergencies. The EUA authority was aided by the Project BioShed Act of 2004, which amended the FD&C Act, among other things. The EUA against COVID-19. Since the declaration of the pandemic as the national health emergency, the FDA has issued nearly 400 EUAs for the personal protective equipment, medical equipment, and vitro diagnostic products, drug products, and most notably, vaccines. The EUA law permits. An EUA permits the use of unapproved medical products, such as drugs, biologicals, and vaccines and devices, or the use of approved medical products in unapproved ways to diagnose, treat, and prevent serious diseases or conditions caused by chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear agents. If certain criteria contained in the FD&C Act, subsection 564, are met. Under the FD&C Act, drugs, biological, and vaccines and devices are required to meet certain requirements for safety and efficiency before they are approved by the Food and Drug Administration to treat particular diseases or conditions in specified ways. Criteria for the EUA authorization. The CBRN agent specified in the declaration of emergency can cause a serious or life-threatening disease or condition. 2, based on the specific evidence available, it is reasonable to believe that the product may be effective in diagnosing, treating, and preventing the disease or condition specified in the declaration of emergency or caused by another medical product to diagnose, treat, or prevent the disease or condition caused by a specific agent. The known and potential benefits outweigh the known and potential risk of the product which used to diagnose, prevent, or treat serious life-threatening diseases or conditions that is subject of this declaration. There is no adequate approved available alternative to the product for diagnosing, preventing, or treating the disease or condition. The FDA Commissioner uses a letter of authority of EUA. The letter must, number 1, the disease or condition the product may be used to diagnose, prevent, or treat within the scope of the EUA, and 2, the known and potential benefits of the product, and 3, conclusions concerning the safety and potential effectiveness of the product. Lastly, 4, an essential, the available scientific evidence, and 5, require the additional conditions and authorization. CDC updates as of July 14, 2021 provides the following. Vaccination is the leading public health preventive strategy to help in the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, widely accessible in the U.S. and are available at no cost to people living in the United States. People who are fully vaccinated are at low risk of symptomatic or severe infections. A growing body of evidence suggests that people who are fully vaccinated are less likely to have asymptomatic infections or transmit COVID-19 to others. A growing body of evidence indicates that people fully vaccinated with the RNA vaccine Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna are less likely than unvaccinated persons to acquire SARS-CoV-2 and to transmit this disease to others. However, the risk of SARS-CoV-2 breakthrough infections in fully vaccinated people cannot be completely eliminated as long as there is continued community transmission of the virus. Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services follows a prescribed process to protect the community from diseases of this significance. We do not support this bill. Further, for the period of December 17, 2020 through September 2, 2021, there are 99,031 WebIZs who have received their second dose of Pfizer or Moderna or single dose of Johnson & Johnson. Without authority to administer the EUA vaccines until fully approved by FDA, which the Pfizer was on August 23, 2021, we would have not vaccinated 95,964 individuals from December 17, 2020 through August 22, 2021. We would not have protected our community and our families. We would be placing our island community at great risk of severe illness, hospitalization, and death. From the date of the full FDA approval of August 23, 2021, there are 4,964 first dose and 1,444 having received their second dose of Pfizer. Therefore, the Department of Public Health and Social Services does not support the passage of Bill 176-36. Thank you for your time this afternoon and allowing us to provide our testimony.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director Uggan. With that, do you have a position on Bill 180?
Oh. Yes, we do. Continue?
Please proceed, yes.
Oh, okay. Testimony on Bill 18036, an act to amend sections 19404, Chapter 19, Title 10, GSA relative to the enforcement of orders related to the citation, fines, and mandatory vaccine established by the Governor of Guam during a public health emergency. Buenas, Madam Speaker, and the members of the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, and to the members of the 36th Guam Legislature. I submit this testimony on behalf of the hardworking and dedicated staff of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to submit testimonies on Bill 180-36, an act to amend subsection 19404 of Chapter 19, Title 10, Guam Code, annotated relative to the enforcement of orders related to citations, fines, and mandatory vaccines established by the Governor of Guam during this public health emergency. The Department of Public Health and Social Services does not support Bill 180-36. COVID-19 has shown us that prompt, swift action is needed in order to protect the health, safety, and general well-being of our citizens. It is the position of the Department of Public Health and Social Services that seeking legislative approval by a majority vote is not necessary and would only serve to delay the immediate actions necessary by our staff to conduct inspections, respond to complaints, and control or eliminate the threats that can further spread infectious diseases in our community, such as COVID-19. The issuance of citations or the threat of issuance such fines for noncompliance with a governor's executive order is a necessary tool that needs to be readily available without any delays. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. We'll now proceed to Chief Daniel Stone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, Senator Brown, Senator Blas, Senator Dueñas, and the senators of the 36th Guam Legislature. My name is Daniel Stone. I am the Chief of the Guam Fire Department. On behalf of my men and women in the front line, on the front lines fighting this pandemic, I am here to testify against the Bill 180 and 176. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were already exposed to great risk every day, responding to emergencies. now that this risk has exponentially increased. Thankfully, the COVID-19 vaccine has provided us with the additional layer of protection to reduce our risk of contracting the virus. Most of us received our vaccine before the U.S. Food and Drug Administration fully approved the COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine. Under the vaccine's emergency use approval by the FDA, our vaccinated personnel felt more confident in responding to emergencies and daily calls for assistance from the public. If any of us had to wait for full approval, I can't imagine what my workforce would look like today. In all of 2020, GFD had 12 of its personnel test positive with COVID-19. In 2021, we experienced positive cases as well. We had 5 in January, 2 in May. However, in August alone, we had 13 of our personnel test positive, requiring isolation at home with moderate to no symptoms, and only 1 requiring hospitalization management, but not requiring acute care. As science has proven, the vaccine has kept our numbers low and lessened our likelihood of complications. GFD currently has a total of 231 employees, of which 212 are fully vaccinated. We have 199 firefighters, of which nearly 92% are fully vaccinated. We have 25 emergency medical dispatchers, of which 88% are fully vaccinated. And we have 7 civilian employees, of which 100% are vaccinated. The remaining 19 employees that are not vaccinated are being tested weekly, and no person has declined the test. Lastly, in the past week, 5 unvaccinated employees have decided to receive their first dose of COVID-19 vaccination, and all 5 are still pending their second dose. All 5 employees must submit to weekly COVID-19 testing. As the numbers show, nearly all of my personnel support getting the vaccine, and most of our community does too. More than 108,000 people of Guam are fully vaccinated. We are safer because of it. In conclusion, we support arming our workforce with the tools necessary to do our duties and protect the public. The vaccines have proven to be an effective tool in our arsenal to carry out our missions and confidently respond to emergencies. We need to respond quickly, just as quick as the pandemic is evolving. The vaccine has been an effective resource for me and my team. As we continue to put ourselves in harm's way to protect our communities, we only ask that others do their part by supporting us and providing more resources and not less. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chief Stone, Guam Fire Department. We'll now hear from Stephen Ignacio, Chief of the Guam Police Department.
Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker Therese Terlaje, Senator Sen Brown, Senator Frank Blas, and Senator Dueñas, and members of the 36th Guam Legislature joining in on Zoom. I am Stephen C. Ignacio, the Guam Police Department Chief. I am providing this testimony in opposition of Bill 180-36, and my testimony is limited to Bill 180-36. The Guam Police Department has been involved with the COVID-19 operations and response since March of 2020. As the Chief of Police, I have seen good days, but a lot of bad days during this pandemic. I have dealt with the news of those who have lost loved ones due to COVID, some are friends or family. As the Chief, I have seen the direct impact it has had on my department and the nearly 50 employees who have tested positive to date. Just recently, I have had to take 2 shifts offline from 1 precinct due to a cluster of positives. We had to have off-duty officers come in to augment the shifts who were exposed and sent home to self-quarantine to prevent further spread among the precinct and, more importantly, to members of our community that we interact with. I have had officers who have worked 7 days straight, 12 hours a day or longer for over a year doing tasks related to this pandemic. They are tired and weary, just like the rest of the community. But they still report for duty because we must continue to fight back against this pandemic, never give in and never give up. GPD has been involved in assisting the Department of Public Health in its response, and we are called to assist with checking on large gatherings at bars, parks, and beaches or other facilities. My opposition to Bill 180 is that it is the function of the executive branch and the governor to promulgate orders to help control the spread of COVID-19. I believe the governor does not make decisions on her own. We have the Physicians Advisory Group, the Surgeon Cell, and public health experts locally and from the federal government who provide guidance and input along the way. We engage the public on a daily basis. I respect the views of all my employees, but I support vaccination for COVID-19. My employees who have not been vaccinated are being tested weekly, and some who have not been vaccinated have recently received their vaccination. Some of it is because of the full FDA approval for the new Pfizer, or the new approval by FDA. So thank you for the opportunity to submit my views, and I respectfully request that this opposition be considered and included in Bill 180-36. Thank you.
Just Mossy, Chief Ignacio. We'll now hear from Tony Young de Gracia.
Hello. My name is Tony Young de Gracia. I reside in Chalampago. I'm a very proud mother of 3, a grandmother, and a business owner here on Guam. This executive order does not apply to my business, but it goes against everything I believe in and stand for. It's discriminating, violating, any form of trespassing. I'm not here to debate science or present data and statistics. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, and I'm not going to claim that I know better. But the reason I'm here today is because this executive order needs to be stopped or amended to where it doesn't create more destruction than what we're up against. To my understanding, this order was made to protect our people. But the very steps in implementing these mandates are literally to turn against each other. For an official announcement made by the governor stating that we're fighting a pandemic of the unvaccinated was publicly putting a target on us and insinuating that we're some kind of an enemy or wrong for making a choice for what we feel is best. Attacking and discriminating one group of people, your own people, was such a poor example of a leader. We are all in this together. We're all fearful because none of us really know what's going to happen. But we're all trying to get through this. And to attack us while we're down sends a clear message that protecting us is not your priority. I can't imagine how difficult it is to be put in your positions, but you're here as our leaders to guide us and represent us and to help us. Instead, everything about this mandate is causing division and chaos for us. My parents, one is fully vaccinated and the other refuses and will never get it. The one who is not vaxxed has no known health issues, and the one who is vaxxed now needs a heart surgery, both in their mid-60s. I'm not saying that it's because of the vaccination, but we need to understand that our bodies, health, and lives are all different, and this is why we have the rights that we have so we can protect it. There are also differences between government and private property, government and private citizens, and also why we have laws and rights that separate the two. You have the authority to protect these laws and not allow anybody in power, whoever it is, to abuse it or misuse it, which is what I'm asking of you. About the vaccine mandate, 2 things I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The vaccine is not a cure, and neither does it have the ability to stop the transmission, meaning we are all vulnerable whether we're vaxxed or not. So how does segregating our people based on that choice going to help? How does choosing who can and cannot make a living, who's entitled to their freedoms, whose lives are more important, and who can or cannot take their children to the movies based on that choice going to help? Telling our people that it is a necessary precaution, meaning there's no other way to keeping our community safe, is completely misleading, biased, and dishonest. And getting vaccinated for most of us when we're younger, was a choice and still is a choice. Those schools we needed it for was government property, run by government or financed by the government. We never needed it to get an education, to work, or enter private establishments. To some, the vaccine is their greatest weapon, and to others, their immunities are. And then there's others who don't care. But whatever that choice is, we are entitled to it. but by giving us an ultimatum to inject something into our bodies, including putting a stick up our noses every week, like we're some kind of animals, is wrong. It is inhumane, and you know that. We also should not give one person that much power to compromise, infringe, and expose our rights, our health, and our privacies. Please keep in mind that there will be other governors that can possibly use this very power and abuse it even more. The intentions may come from a good place, but if we allow this to continue, we're opening doors to more violation of our rights and more unethical mandates, claiming that it's for the greater good, but by doing it in all the wrong ways. You are showing our people that it's okay to break all kinds of rules, that we no longer have to have morals and principles just to carry out one order. We're not the government, we're not the military, we are private citizens. I understand we're trying to keep our community safe, and I'm all in for that, but we can't do it by adding fuel to the fire. This is the time we need each other the most. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeGracia. Thank you. We'll now hear from Sean McManus.
Hello. All right. Half a day and good afternoon. My name is Sean McManus. I'm 22, and I attend the University of Guam. I'm studying business. Anyway, I'm not here to question the efficacy of the vaccine or whether it will create a zombie outbreak, however tantalizing it may be. In light of the previous testimonies, I'd like to add that the vaccine seems like it's getting less and less effective. So it seems to me that I might need to get vaccinated to be put in a coffin. Additionally, or I digress, I am one of the inheritors of this economy after the pandemic becomes a distant memory. The implications of a mandate and subsequent actions are unbeknownst to the people that should know. I believe this virus is here to stay, another addition to the long list of ways the species of man can die. Viruses are designed with, much like us, and to quote Schopenhauer, a will zum Leben, a will to life. Viruses evolve, and so does our treatment for them. There have been viruses since the primordial combustion of the star that created everything that is here before me. The author of the book, The Plague, a most venerable man named Albert Camus, wrote that there have been as many plagues as wars in history, yet always plagues and wars take people equally by surprise. And to quote him again, but what does it mean, the plague? It's life, that's all. For the United States in 2019, according to the CDC, 659,041 people have died from heart disease. 599,601 people have died from cancer, and 173,040 have died from unintentional accidents, and another 49,783 have died from influenza and pneumonia. Every day, all humankind walk out on whatever surface that will support their gravitational fall and continues on with gaiety, despite the fact that the repertoire of one's life could be concluded at any time. Death is perpetually inexorable, and life is the plague. My sister's repertoire was finished at the age of 21, and my mother's own at 58. Cancer was their plague. So I ask you and the people of Guam this: should they have sequestered themselves to anti-cancer cages since their introduction to the world? Or should they have been mandated to the point where they lose their hair and vigor with chemotherapy in order to go anywhere? I think not. My sister and mother enjoyed every extravagant indulgence of life, some simpler than others, but they did so never knowing that cancer might join them on their journey. Nevertheless, Veni Vidi Vici. They came, they saw, and they conquered, and Guam will do the same. But the question lies in how we will deal with this virus and how we will live with it in the future. In conclusion, since the inception of the vaccine and up to August 16th, there has been 1,924 cases and only 25 deaths. Now the cases have increased, and there's about 26 deaths, if I'm not mistaken, and that is a 1.30% chance of death, less if you've been inoculated. It is sufficient to say that although cases are increasing at exorbitant amounts, this infection is most likely than not fatal. Guam doesn't need vaccine mandates, it needs better protocols. Guam can learn a lot from the policies and protocols issued in other countries around the globe. Safety isn't the only facet of our island in danger. Socratic dialogue should be a permeated theme in the government, and I am not here as a mere conquistador who wishes to beseech for the adoption of his ideas. I'm here to open the minds of my people and spark an inclination for others to question and debate, so that there may be a conclusive decision that does not attack the cultures of our people, a decision that is a Guamanian one that can serve everybody. We should be united in such ambiguous times. The future of our island is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McManus. We'll now hear from Debbie Staley.
Hafaday, thank you, Senators, for the opportunity to speak today on Bill 180 in support of that, and also a comment on Bill 176. However, the real purpose of why I'm here is, why did these bills even have to be introduced in the first place? It's appalling that we are having to fight a battle for our own freedom on our own soil against one who took an oath to protect her people. The purpose for which we are here today is not merely for our own personal immediate comfort alone, but also for that of our posterity, the generations to come. This is precisely why your ancestors and other liberators freed Guam from occupation. It was for you and me, their posterity. Are we willing to so easily give up those freedoms for which so many Chamorros sacrificed their lives to give us the privilege that we enjoy today? For over 23 years, I've lived on Guam. It's my home. I'm a homeowner invested in the community. In the past year, I've watched our governor overstep her authority again and again and again. Her recent executive order mandating vaccination is an extreme abuse of power, and has rightfully so caused a public outcry for the breach of freedom and infringement on our civil rights. Our island cannot continue to live in an indefinite state of emergency, especially when that is being used to oppress and punish innocent citizens. The lack of transparency, blatant disregard for advisors, and enforcement of coercive measures are more than alarming. I'm against the governor's vaccination mandate for many reasons. One, medical procedures, including testing and injections, require informed consent. Is that happening? Are the potential side effects being given to people? Are the risks being discussed with their doctors? A mandate negates informed consent. I submit to you then that the government does not have the right to mandate a medical procedure. There are risks to getting the vaccines. There are risks to not getting the vaccines. A person needs to be able to choose which risk is more important for his or her situation. Number two, the mandate puts us on a slippery slope toward communism and a dictatorship. The scare tactics and psychological manipulations for the greater good are tools that we have seen used successfully in the last 100 years in Russia and Germany, to name a couple. It has been said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Government was created to be a protector of freedom rather than a thief of it, and I would add, is not a protector of our health. They are a protector of our freedom. Number three, the mandate promotes segregation and division. Having lived here for over 23 years, one of the things I love about our island home is our hospitality and inclusion of all cultures. The people of Guam are colorblind, and the welcoming spirit transcends language barriers. This mandate violates the Hafaday spirit we know and love, and thus will destroy our very culture. Number four, there are treatments for COVID-19. Is Guam using them? If not, why not? Early treatment has been shown to prevent hospitalization and death and would ease the burden of our fragile healthcare system. Number five, why is this being mandated for people who already have the antibodies? The latest scientific studies are showing that natural immunity is a greater protection than the vaccine. Are we testing people for antibodies before administering the vaccine? Number six, what are the long-term effects of this shot? We don't know. Bill 180 is a needed step to ensure one person is not allowed to take advantage of that power. I fully support checks and balances in our government. As it stands, however, it would still allow for a vote in the legislature to strip away an individual's freedom over what is injected into his or her body, or else face hardship and penalty. So I don't think we stop with Bill 180. We've got to move forward. I know other bills are being introduced, Bill 181, Bill 183. We need to push for some of those. This bill also still allows for segregating people who are not sick and forcing them to undergo invasive testing that is not required of everyone. Without protection for the unvaccinated population, this bill is incomplete. However, I understand it's a starting point, and so I fully support the starting point of this bill. 176 in its intent seems good, but is concerning since merely being FDA approved should not give the government the right to enforce it on anyone, which goes into Bill 180. There are many FDA approved substances that would not be safe or recommended for every individual. The desire of Bill 180 to protect against the abuse of power, coupled with bills that are in the pipeline coming up, have the possibility of hope for Guam against a communistic society. However, it takes a unified legislature to stand strong and fight for the freedom of the people. It is not too late to reverse course. You, the 36th Guam legislature, have the power to put some restraints on our governor. Sidos Measi.
Sidos Measi, Ms. Staley. All right, again, so we will, I'll now open it up for the panel. I'd also refer all of you to, we had a public health oversight hearing this afternoon where we did talk about other alternatives and treatment that might be made available or supposed to be made available and other alternatives. So that will be online on YouTube, just like this hearing will be online on YouTube. We'll open it up to the sponsor of the bill, Senator Blas, if you have any questions for this panel.
Thank you, Ms.
Again, we have 18 people left to testify.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Deputy Director, Fire Chief, and Chief Ignacio, earlier, Ms. Lillian Posadas. I am honored that the administration has sent down the Army to go up against the opposition of this bill. But I'm also confused as to what you're opposing. Because there's nowhere in any of the bills that are being opposed that says that we're going to, if the individual wants to get vaccinated, they can. That's not the intent of any of the bills. But along the lines, I just want to be able to ask some of the questions. Mr. Uggan, you're probably the best person to ask these, to answer these questions. First off, we talked earlier. The community was informed about this need for herd immunity. Why do we need herd immunity?
You know, herd immunity is real significant in that the more people that we do have vaccinated here on the island, our data has shown that they are less likely to be going into the hospital. And if they do go into the hospital, they're less likely to have extreme conditions. They're less likely to end up on ventilators and so forth. This in itself takes the pressure off of the hospital because they continue to focus on other cases that need to come into the hospital that are ICU, intensive care worthy, such as cancer patients or heart attack cases and so forth. So just that in itself is significant to raising Guam to a level of herd immunity. And the interesting fact is that Guam is unique in the fact that so many other places have actually tried to reach this goal, and we've been able to do so within a reasonable period of time.
Okay. So have we achieved herd immunity on Guam?
That's correct.
When did we achieve that?
I'll take a moment and I'll look through my dates. Or I can't see.
Was it July 29?
Yes, but he's asking for the date in which we met herd immunity.
July 29th. At least that's when you had your press conference, right?
Right.
Okay?
And I do apologize because the acoustics of this room is not too good.
No,
for
no,
my
no,
hearing.
no, not a problem. So you achieved it on July 29th. And so when was the executive order that mandated the vaccines to be provided? Executive Order 2021-17.
I don't have the exact date
Okay.
in front of me.
It's August 6th.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
So basically about a week after herd immunity was achieved.
yes.
Yeah, and you receive herd immunity prior to making the vaccines mandated. In other words, you receive herd immunity because people had a choice
Right.
to be vaccinated.
And we were also able to do it as an emergency under the EUA.
It's got nothing to do with the vaccine. I'm just talking about, I'm not talking about whether or not it was emergency use authorization or fully approved. Of which, by the way, it's only one, Pfizer. You've been vaccinating people with Moderna and with Johnson & Johnson, which haven't been fully approved yet.
Right.
We can go to that later on. But you've achieved herd immunity prior to the executive order from individuals who were able to, who got the vaccine on their free will, right?
Yes.
Why was the reason then you have to go to an August 6th, an executive order, you know, to order people now to get vaccinated, to mandate them, order them to get vaccinated? What is it that the administration is not telling the people of Guam about the value, or why have we now increased herd immunity rate without telling the rest of us?
You know, we've reached that through a great deal of outreach efforts and
Yes.
education, campaign messages.
Right.
It has been a full force,
Uh-huh.
almost a team, army team of people going out and getting the messaging out there.
How long did it take for the administration to be able to come up with the order to vaccinate individuals, to mandate the vaccination? How long was that discussion?
Herd immunity was only children 18 and older. We only had 12 and older, so this is, I think, July, okay? It's 18, that's when we only have 18 and older eligible.
I can barely hear this guy.
This is 12 and older, and this is where our herd immunity is, we're at 65%.
Okay. So, all right, so our director was enough to go ahead and hand me over that the overall population of 168,322, we reached 80% at 1,348, 658 at the 80% mark. For those that are 12 years and older, the total is at 80%, it's 109,034, and then eligible 18 and older at 96,031.
I think I know what you're getting at, but you see, initially the administration came out with their press conference that we attained herd immunity on July 29. I noticed on your JIC reports that now you've included those 12 and above. That's a whole other conversation. But let me go back to the last question that I had asked you.
Okay.
How long did it take the administration or the bodies that be, the powers that be, to come to the decision that we needed to go now to mandate vaccination? How long was that discussion?
You know, the discussion around the approach to vaccination and the need to elevate Guam to the level where our island was fully vaccinated, these have been ongoing discussions.
So it's been ongoing.
Discussions around the need to
Okay.
vaccinate the
And I bring
the
this
people
up,
of
Mr.
Guam.
Uggan, because you had initially said something that, the opposition to Bill 180 was because there are times that you need to take immediate actions. A long, ongoing process is not an immediate action. And what Bill 180 proposes to do this, okay?
And my point being is that there is still remains discussion around the planning and the approach.
And I am so glad we are having this discussion, and maybe that was the impetus for Bill 176 and 180, because finally we have members of the administration to come and talk to this body and to the people of Guam about what we want to do, about what should be done. Finally. Thank you. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Senators. Senator Dueñas, do you have any questions for this panel?
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, yeah, I mean, as far back as Bill 11, the initial discussion, but I'm not going to go there, Madam Speaker. To Terry, my good colleague, had already asked this question. Chief Stone, and to all of you, I want to start by saying I'm not anti-vax, I'm anti-mandatory vax. Okay? Choose, go get your shot, good for you. Okay. Chief Stone, and I want to congratulate all of your teams and the levels at which your vaccinations are. But Chief, I need to make sure that the public understands what we're talking about tonight. All of your men and women and those on the front line got their vaccinations without it being mandatory, right, Chief?
That is correct, Senator.
Yeah. And GPD Chief as well. I need to get that on the record. The frontliners, your men and women in blue out there, prior to us saying what we're talking about here is mandatory vaccines, your troops went out there and got it. They were not mandated, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, I just think it's so important tonight when we're talking about these bills. We respect your opinions. We respect the choice of those who have made that decision. But tonight, these two bills are talking about mandatory vaccination. An edict put down from the governor through executive order saying you must do this, or have other consequences, which most of these folks otherwise have come down tonight to say that's what they're opposing and that's why they want better regulation. As per the laws of Guam. The laws of Guam are promulgated from this legislature. Sidus Masi, Madam Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator Dueñas. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for this panel?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Not so much a question, but I certainly appreciate the points that have been brought up by our colleagues here. I think we recognize the important role our government officials provide, certainly for each of you, for Guam Fire, for the Guam Police Department, and certainly, Terry, for you and the work of you and your colleagues at Public Health. But I think what we're having the opportunity here today really is to hear the input of the people and how do we balance the interests of the community and also protect the rights and liberties of our people. And so I appreciate, Mr. Gracia, your testimony. Mr. McManus, yours. I appreciate your comments. I did not know your sister and your mother personally, but I know this loss is recent. So for you to come and provide this testimony, I know it's very heartfelt, so thank you for taking the time to do that. And Ms. Staley, I mean, this is what we want to be able to bring is a balance between the interests of protecting our community overall and how do we ensure that the rights of our citizens is maintained so that they can make these choices, because they're difficult either way. We don't know what the long-term impacts are of these vaccinations, and I myself, as discussed, voluntarily chose, because I have an elderly parent and a young child in my immediate surroundings and my family, and I want to protect them. But we're trying to make the best decisions based on the information that's provided to us as a community. But at the same time, we also have the voices of our people that are being brought forth that feel that their individual rights to make those decisions for themselves and their family, that they're not being given that opportunity, that this issue is being forced upon our people. And so I think that's what the dialogue is tonight, and I do appreciate, I mean, it's very heartfelt, the testimony has been provided from those of you from the community in terms of your views on this issue. And it gives us a lot to think about and deliberate as we make decisions on this legislation and as we move forward in this process. But I think we all agree, we want to move on. We want to look forward to the day when we can move away from where this virus and the incredible changes to our life that it's brought. So thank you for your testimony. I mean, we're going to have to take it all into consideration. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Senator Taitigui, do you have questions for this panel?
Yes, I do, to Public Health. Terry, we heard earlier from Lillian Posadas, a couple of nurses who are not taking the vaccine. Is there anyone at public health right now, any of the nurses that left because they did not want to take the vaccine at all?
No, Senator, none that I am aware of.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I have a son who lives in Arizona who's a paramedic, and he was telling me that there are nurses who are leaving the hospital. I mean, the beds are available, but the staff is not because of nurses leaving because they're being mandated to take the vaccine. And this is an issue that could come up that I'm greatly concerned about. If you have, frontliners leaving because they choose not to take the vaccine for one reason or another, I think that's something that we need to consider. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, Madam Speaker. And thank you, everyone, for testifying on this panel. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Senator Taitzagui. And I, too, would like to, Director, would you like to say something? Director Sanagasti. I'd like to thank each of you for your testimony while we're waiting for the, okay, go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members of the committee. I just wanted to share some with regards to the response from my deputy there. I know that we looked at immunity. It was immunity of the eligible population 18 and older. And that was our target. And that was our target with the idea that if we had enough individuals who were eligible, 18 and older, our adults, that we could go back to some degree of normalcy. And this was at the time that we were looking at the alpha. It wasn't until later on in the coming months that we then identified the Delta variant here in Guam. And this Delta variant is a game changer. It is highly transmissible. And even earlier in the oversight, the speaker had made reference to the fact that we are seeing younger children become COVID positive. And yes, there are continuous meetings, but the continuous meetings are part of the process we partake in with our physicians advisory group, our surgeon cell, the governor, the legal team, and many others who provide input and data and look at trends, just like what Dr. Ann Pobitsky provided earlier, is showing us where are we at right now in the community and what are steps we need to take. This Delta variant changed it. We are now seeing the surge. We know there's community spread. We're fortunate at this time, based on the information we have, that we don't have spread within the school system in terms of student to student. What we have found out is that the spread in the school is from households. And I just wanted to share that with all of you this evening so that we need to meet. We meet regularly because we're watching what's happening in the national, international scene. We're watching what's happening in the Philippines. We're really looking at everything, not just locally, but globally. We got people looking at from what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the US, what's happening to the nurses, where we're going to get nurses. And so there's a lot of planning. And based on the data that we receive, based on the data I get from my team, the data that comes from other sources, hospitalization has gone up. And so when we see the hospital, we're also putting our community at risk for those that come in for non-COVID situations, non-COVID health, medical requirements that they need. And this effort really is to help us maintain our operations at the hospital so that everyone on Guam, regardless if you're going in there for COVID-19 or because you suffered a heart attack, the hospitals can take care of us. And that's all this is. And I just wanted to share that with you because I feel that, Terry and I were talking and he worked so hard on these testimonies. I really wanted him to do this, but I'm the one that goes to a lot of the meetings and Terry's helping with the social service side. And so I have two deputies and we have on different hats because COVID-19 is very consuming in terms of all the work we have to do. With the monoclonal antibody, which the speaker had asked about earlier with Senator Brown and others of the 36 Guam members present, it was launched today at GRMC, Guam Regional Medical Center, but that's a collaborative effort. And this is what we hope will help us contain and decrease the number of individuals who are positive and suitable for this treatment so they don't become hospitalized. It's shown to have proven to be about 75 to 80% effective. And that's all I just wanted to share so that well, just to give a balanced perspective, but I really want to thank you for allowing me to share that, Speaker and members of the 36. Sizuos Maase.
Thank you very much, Director San Agustin.
Madam Speaker, I just got one question. And it's basically, with
Senator
regards
Blas,
to
Senator
medical
Blas,
exemption,
your question is for public health?
to public health, okay, whether it be Mr. San Agustin and Mr. Urgan, with regards to the exemptions that are accepted in as far as religious and medical exemptions, they go to public health for these clearances? Okay, because right now I'm getting receiving reports that they're getting the runaround with regards to trying to get these exemptions.
Yeah, yes, it is through public health. It is in our guidance. We have a website, email address, and a telephone number that one can call. But again, as I work with many of you here in the legislative body, if you do have a situation, many of you have my contact number to the Guam legislative body. Your staff or you always are free to call my office, and we will assist the best way we can. Thank you.
Madam Chair, since the director's gone on the record, I got one question direct to him.
Okay, Senator.
So I understand your position, Art, and I respect it as the director, but once again, going back, because now that the former Physician Advisory Group chair resigned and his main situation was the mandating of, so obviously it means, and I have to ask you this directly, in your conversations, and that's why Senator Blas was asking the question, have there been differences of opinion and approach to whether or not mandating a vaccine is the way to go, regardless, because that was after the Delta variant when the doctor basically had his major opposition to this issue?
Senator Dueñas, I just want to make sure that what you're asking is, in our discussions, are there difference of opinions?
That's correct.
You know, first and foremost, I can't get into the details because I've been advised many times. I'm sorry, many times over in our meetings with the governor that it's privileged, but I will go off to say that yes, that is part of the process that we go through. We come in with different opinions, the public health opinion, the medical opinion, the surgeon cells perspective, Gong's perspective, everything from manpower to practice to approach to strategies, to re-stratification of assessing individuals for what they would be most suitable for, to testing platforms, to re-stratification of testing approaches. So yes, it's a very hearty, deliberative process, and one that we all share, at least for myself, where our perspectives and what we believe is in the best interest to protect the community of Guam. And that's what we do. So yes, there are going to be differences.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Director. Again, thank you to all of you. I really appreciate the details that you put into your testimony and the obvious work and thought, and especially to the directors. In addition to your testimony, I'm very glad to see you here willing to listen as well to the rest of the community who are, we have to, as you said, do this together. We are in this together and we have to get through this together. So I'm very glad for the dialogue and that we are able to hear each other. Sizuos Masi, be safe.
Madam Chair, if we can get copies of the testimony if you've had them. Okay?
Yes.
You can work with staff and I especially like all three of you. I like yours too, okay? Oh yeah, that one, okay, but please? Yes.
Yes, please email to my office, senatorterlajeguam@gmail.com, if you haven't provided it in writing prior to the hearing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we will provide that to everybody. Thank you again. Link. All right, we're going to now welcome the third panel. Thank you for your patience. Again, a reminder, mask must remain on. Please maintain your 6-foot distance in the hallways. Please keep your testimony to 5 minutes. We have 18 people left to testify. And please state whether you are in favor or against Bill 180 and Bill 176. All right. We're going to begin with, all right, please keep the microphone at your mouth, not higher. Thank you. Ms. Gina Campos. Oh, Gina, would you like to pass?
I printed out a portion of a letter that Terry Antolon had published in the Pt.1. And the reason I did that is because she names a list of senators here that I believe, I'm asking the public to pray for all of the people of the legislature, but most especially these senators, because without their support, we cannot move forward and we cannot end what's going on our island. So we need everybody's support, and I'm asking the community to pray for all of them, but most especially these senators who didn't support the bill. I'm testifying, and I am in support of the Bill 180-36 and 176-36 because I have nothing else that I can support today. And even though it falls short of what we were hoping for, it is a start in the right direction. Good afternoon, good senators. My name is Gina Campos, and I'm here today because I believe we each have an individual responsibility to speak up, act out, or step in when we recognize a wrong. Good moral people know the difference between right and wrong. This is an inherent characteristic in every human being because we are all created by God. It is impossible that somewhere in our being we do not recognize truth. What interferes with our recognition of truth, what is right and wrong, is our individual needs and desires. There are times like this when others must step in to provide guidance to what is fundamentally correct. As a community, we are now divided by the governor's latest mandate, a mandate that separates our island, our community, our families, our people. A mandate that puts in place segregation and promotes hatred and biases. A mandate that promotes a wrong that many of us believe has been left behind long, long ago. Since March of 2020, we have lived with this emergency order from our government. It is going on 18 months. Can an emergency really last 18 months? An emergency is an unseen combination of circumstances that calls for immediate action, something which you cannot plan for. Senators, it has been 18 months. If our governor is unable to figure out what direction we need to go so that we arrive with different results, then it is time you all step up. You were elected too to serve the people. How did we come to this? How can some senators sit back and continue to allow this? The new EO mandates serve to punish unvaccinated families and individuals, to punish employees in certain industries, schools, and government agencies. This mandate serves to coerce individuals into taking the vaccine. When in our society have we ever knowingly allowed coercion of this from anyone? We don't, most especially from an elected public official. Some individuals who had previously selected not to vaccinate now are lining up to take the vaccine in fear of losing their jobs, their freedom, and their ability to be with their family. This is coercion, and it is wrong. Senators, can you continue to sit back? As of September 1st, 109,941 individuals, including children ages 12 to 17, have been vaccinated. Recently, the COVID-19 cases highlighted the number of vaxxed and unvaxxed. Now, the report no longer shows the vaxxed individuals that are infected with COVID. Why is this no longer transparent? Today, thanks to PDN, it was reported that out of 55 patients in the hospital, 32 are not vaccinated, which means 41% or 23 people are vaccinated. If this is the truth, why are individuals being mandated to take the vaccine? With any other issue, my doctor seeks my consent to administer treatment. Why is this any different? I pray that each of you can see beyond your personal interests, beyond what your personal interests may be, and do what is right and good for every citizen of our island. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Campos. We'll now hear from Marcella Shepard.
Good afternoon. I am here in favor of both Bill 180-36 and 176-36. My name is Marcella Shepard. I am a wife and a mother of 2. My husband is vaccinated, I am not, and my children are not. But now that we have gotten the labels out of the way, I wish to humbly propose a couple basic questions. The intent in the line of questioning is not to elicit an immediate response, but to incite constructive thought. First, how has the mandate protected our community or reduced our risk of transmission? If I may offer relevant data to assist in your conclusion, Executive Order number 2021-20, signed and promulgated on August 23, 2021, at 10:15 p.m. that same day, the Joint Information Center reported 682 active cases with a CAR score of 15.2. September 2nd, 2021, 10 days into the segregation of our people, the Joint Information Center reports 1,763 active cases with a CAR score of 46.1. The information being reported via Joint Information Center indicates that the governor's order is not effective. Second, can anyone prove that this vaccine is safe in the future? I do not ask out of fear for my own body's response, but I ask with the deepest of curiosity and concern for the future well-being of my children, other people's children, and grandchildren. Many in the community have been coerced into believing the fault lies with the unvaxxed. We are not battling a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The protective measures have created division and a false sense of security. Please listen to your people. The weapon for this battle is education, not fear or negative peer pressure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shepard. We'll now hear from Dominic Hernandez.
Hafa. Thank you, Senators. My name is Dominic Hernandez. I reside in the village of Ukudu Dededo. First, I just want to state I am fully vaccinated, but I support both of these bills. The virus has made many sick. However, many have also survived and became more health conscious and cautious even before the vaccine was available for distribution. So my question is, why are we changing the stance on individuals' rights to take the vaccine willingly? We shouldn't. Why are we throwing ourselves into this fear-mongering ideology? Because that's the narrative of the story. The same way it goes with the narrative for the idea of taking away the rights of individuals who choose not to be vaccinated. The strategy to push the mandate on the vaccine is an old but effective strategy, divide and rule by Julius Caesar himself. Throw one part of the public into panic mode, so they go into flight or fight mode, while the other side gets ridiculed, discriminated against, belittled, segregated, and battered down for standing up for their own belief and rights. As of late, many media sources, to include our own government, has ran off this idea of safety and health for all. Even earlier, I just heard them say the greater good of all. A little known fact about those two statements: what's safe and healthy for me is not safe and healthy for everyone. And for the greater good of all means leaving a few behind and sacrificing people. As a prior service member serving in the United States Marine Corps, we have a code: no man left behind. And I refuse to see anyone left behind, especially those who choose not to be vaccinated. We have people who have medical reasons that cannot take the vaccine. We have individuals whose belief and their religious belief is against the idea of the vaccine. While there is this exemption for religious and health reasons, I have heard from individuals who attempted to apply for these exemptions who have had zero luck getting through to anyone that actually can help them apply for this exemption. So those same individuals have no choice but to either test weekly for COVID or be forced into taking the vaccine to avoid weekly tests and any possible fines for refusal. The vaccine is a great man-made invention, and I admit that, but it is neither the cure nor the answer to solve our problem with the pandemic. It's merely a temporary solution. I understand this fact. It is a temporary solution, and I willingly chose to take the full vaccination prior to this mandate. My reasons for taking it are of my own personal choice and not the recommendation or now the mandate that the government requires, and that's how it should be. There are many medicines and health practices that have been proven through scientific research and experience from others that is just as effective, if not more effective, than this vaccine. So again, why are we trying to mandate this? One of the many reasons I can give you, as far as I know, is the fact of money. On a recent talk show by Chris and Bree, one of our government officials admitted that for every individual who receives the vaccine fully, the government is rebated $80 per person, totaling in around $13 million if we reach 100% vaccinations. Another money factor is those who invested in the pharmaceutical companies who manufacture the vaccines. On September 4, 2020, Moderna Incorporated stock was worth $62.60. As of August 31st, 2021, Moderna Incorporated stock is worth $370.69 per share. That is an increase of 471.26% in value. If I bought 100 shares of Moderna last September, paying around $6,200 for 100 shares, my shares today would be worth $37,069. By mandating the vaccine, we are simply helping the rich, especially in the pharmaceutical companies, become richer, a fact that cannot be disputed. While I agree the vaccine can have benefits for the public, on the same note, are we as citizens of the United States of America and of our beautiful island of Guam willing to give up our rights in the so-called name of safety and health for all or for the greater good of all? When we know, in fact, if we keep this mandate going, we will simply allow the rich to become more powerful and wealthy. Are we willing to just simply lie down and give in to what others believe is safe and healthy for us instead of deciding for our own selves? Are we willing to keep allowing our government to throw out the narrative, the pandemic of the unvaccinated, to divide and rule us all? Are we willing to allow discrimination and segregation to become dominant in our society because of an individual's right to say no to the vaccine? I say no to all the above, because it's not only my right to say no, but it is the right moral thing to do. It has gone so far to the point certain businesses have elected to shut their doors or resort to other means to ensure they do not discriminate against an individual's choice to be vaccinated or not. Why have we gone this far? Why is this even acceptable? It shouldn't be. It is not a freedom of choice to tell a person to take the vaccine or to take a weekly test to prove you're negative. That's an ultimatum. I say that's an ultimatum because if you refuse to take the vaccine and refuse to take the weekly test, fines will be given for refusing both. And truth is, the virus can still spread even through the vaccinated. So why aren't the vaccinated people required to test weekly to prove that they aren't a carrier of the virus prior to showing up to work and only the unvaccinated are required? The answer is because it's not the narrative they want us to know. If the data showed that the many that tested positive in the past week were vaccinated, it would contradict the narrative that the vaccine is the answer to solve our problems. But as I stated, the vaccine is merely a temporary solution. There are other medicines and practices out there that, if given the opportunity, can in fact treat us more efficiently and effectively, or possibly even cure COVID. So again, why are we trying to mandate this? Protect the rights of our citizens. It is the job of any elected official to uphold, and that is what I learned from running for office last election. We are at a challenge here. Do we surrender our rights for this vaccine? And if we do, this is only the beginning of ending our democracy if we allow this. Or do we uphold our true values of democracy, protect the citizens' rights to decide for their own health and safety, stand against anyone who interferes with our rights, our pursuit of happiness, and our justice for all? Stand with us, senators, and show the people they made the right choice electing you into office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Dr. Paul Burton?
I would like to start by thanking the senators for their initiative in introducing these two bills and for the opportunity that I have to speak here today. My name is Paul Burton. I'm a medical doctor, physician. I've served this island for over a decade. I possess a fair amount of professional understanding of viruses, vaccines, public health. I've closely followed this pandemic. I have a very strong memory of all that's been done to us in the name of a public emergency. We've had lockdowns. We had attempted road closures, not just attempted, but road closures that were done to us. Now we have this mandate. And I would ask everyone here, are these incursions on our freedoms and our rights, have they been worth it? Did we receive any value from that? I'm here to present to you my impression, my professional medical opinion, that these lockdowns that we suffered through have not actually saved lives. We hear about that. We hear the shame, the attempts to blame, place responsibility for our desire to protect our rights and how selfish we are to ask and care about maintaining our rights, our constitutional rights, our freedoms. I would present to you my opinion about the tempo and the progression, the development of this epidemic. In truth, a viral epidemic takes the lives that it's going to take in short order or over the long term. It does not make much difference. Lockdowns may have reduced the rate of fatalities per day, per week, per month. But I would present to you that in the end, the virus takes what it's going to take. We don't exactly have control over a highly communicable virus. We pretend that we do. We think we have a silver bullet. In the end, the numbers of lives that will be taken. And every life is a tragedy that is taken is truly a tragedy. However, I do not approve of our emotions, our love and concern for the victims to be exploited and to be used against us, to inflict fear, shame. If we will not allow a certain level of totalitarian control that some opportunists in politics would desire to have. Okay, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I am a scientist. I am a physician. I care about people. Did we get the value that we thought we would get from submitting to these unilateral, individually dictated inflictions against our liberty and our freedom of movement? should we even be arguing about the safety and efficacy of a vaccine, hopefully there is some efficacy and that we can improve the course of the epidemic and move closer to herd immunity, for example, with the aid of a vaccine. But are we barnyard animals to be told, not even just told, but to be forced to receive a medical treatment, an invasive treatment into our own personal biological system, our body, the very essence of our life and our being? I feel that it is evil and wrong to mandate any medical procedure to an individual. This is my opinion. This is my observation as a professional. And I applaud the efforts for our senators who have brought these bills before us. I would ask them to continue the fight. I would refer to the good advice from Ms. Debbie Staley. Don't stop there. Continue the fight. Protect our freedoms, the freedom of our posterity, our children's children, and their children depend on what we do now. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Burton. We're now going to go virtual, so I haven't forgot the two of you, but we're going to go virtual now to Dr. Jeff Cruz.
Madam Speaker and Vice Speaker, Senators, and the people of Guam, Hafide, my name is Dr. Jeff Cruz. I'm an internal medicine physician at Guam Memorial Hospital and have been working there since 2012. Guam is my home and always will be. I was born and raised here and returned after my medical training to do what I love, serving the underserved population of Guam. This pandemic is a scourge on our island. It is the worst pandemic the world has seen since the Spanish flu of 1918. Most of you in this room have been affected by COVID in some way, whether it be having COVID, having an ill family member, or God forbid, a death in your immediate family. As a frontline healthcare worker, I've seen many people die from this disease. It's a horrible way to die. They die alone with no loved ones around. There are nurses in the States and all over the world who use what they call the hand of God, which is basically a glove filled with warm water that dying patients can hold on to mimic the feeling of a person's hand holding them as they take their last breath, to make them feel that they are not alone. This is the kind of disease that we are dealing with. Now we have the means to prevent severe disease and even death: vaccines. I understand that people want their personal freedoms, and this mandate basically comes down to personal freedoms versus altruism. We need to come together as a community to fight this. Vaccination will decrease the incidence of severe disease and death from COVID. If you choose to not get vaccinated, you need to be prepared for the worst possible consequences, including death, a type of death that I've seen many times and that I would not wish on my worst enemy. I will admit the vaccine is not perfect, especially against the new Delta variant, but it is still shown to prevent severe disease and death. This is the battle we are fighting right now, preventing death. And the vaccine is the most powerful tool we have to prevent death from COVID. As of 6 p.m., I will be starting a 12-hour night shift. And to be completely honest with you, it scares me because I know what I'm going to see coming through those ER doors tonight. Unvaccinated people with COVID pneumonias and poor prognoses that are much, much harder to treat than those people who are vaccinated, as we are seeing this upsurge in new COVID cases. But we show up to work every night, every day. Our internal medicine hospitalists and intensivists, our nurses at GMH and GRMC are all there and ready to take care of you no matter what. All I ask is you consider the strain our fragile healthcare system is enduring and the mental, emotional, and physical strength it takes healthcare workers like me to deal with COVID daily, just because we as an island community can't find a common ground. To my fellow islanders, please do your part as citizens. To our business owners, please do your part for our island. I don't have answers for the politics of this. I know the science. Wear a mask, wash your hands, please social distance and get vaccinated. With love for you, my fellow Guamanians, Dr. Jeff Cruz. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut this short. I'm getting calls from the ER. I hope that my testimony is adequate. Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker and Senators.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cruz, for your testimony. And with that, we'll also have another virtual testimony from Mr. John Dueñas.
Hello, Senators. This is John Dueñas. I'd like to read my testimony just to make sure that it's brief. On Bill 17636, the bill focuses on authorizing the use of a vaccine distinguished between a vaccine receiving authorization for emergency use and one that has been formally approved by the US FDA, rather than addressing the issue of the governors imposing an authoritarian mandate that divides our community, impinges on a citizen's decision on whether to be vaccinated or not, and which forces private enterprises to invade a citizen's, a customer, a consumer, an employee's private medical history and personal choices by demanding proof of vaccination under threat of severe penalties. I oppose this bill because it would have prevented Guam from enjoying the demonstrated beneficial results of COVID-19 vaccines developed under Trump's Warp Speed program, which received emergency use authorization in December 2020, and which set communities in the United States and territories on a path to creating herd immunity against this virus. If the provisions of this bill were in effect in late 2020, each adult of our island community would not have had the opportunity to be vaccinated by individual choice until last week. With regard to Bill 180-76, this bill amends the current law to include the legislature in enacting a proof of vaccination policy. The bill entrusts two independent branches of our government with the responsibility of debating and collaborating on the crafting of provisions for the enforcement of a proof of vaccination policy, which affects our entire community and which affords our citizenry and sectors of our population, including medical, food service, retail, commercial, et cetera, with the opportunity to comment on and or submit input on the formulation of such provisions. I support this bill. If this bill somehow becomes law and the result of our government's subsequent deliberation of the enforcement provisions of a proof of vaccination policy ends up being the same as what is now in place, God help us all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dueñas, for your testimony. The next testimony we have is also virtual with Ms. Elizabeth Dueñas.
Thank you. I wanted to read a letter first before my testimony that I had sent to all of the senators that I was opposed to the governor's mandate requiring that all businesses check for vaccination paperwork before allowing them to enter the business establishment. This is totally in violation of people's rights. It is now discrimination between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. A person's right to choose what happens to their bodies is an individual right. I've already seen individuals who are normally healthy now have their immune system compromised because of the vaccination raises quite a bit of concern. I have been vaccinated, but only chose to do so in order to travel, therefore not requiring quarantine and downtime with my business. Luckily, I did not have any health issues after being vaccinated. The mandate is unconscionable. Guam individuals and businesses have suffered enough. Why put us through another cycle? To force our employees to be vaccinated to keep their jobs is totally unfair. The ability to work based on their skills, reliability, diligence is now being compromised and now based on immunization. How ridiculous and absurd. As senators, you all have the opportunity to put a stop to this, as was tried at one time, but some of you voted against it, but it did not garner enough support. You have the opportunity to make things right. We need legislation to stop these so-called emergency powers. You, our senators, are here to serve the community for the greater good. So I support Bill 180-36 because it allows for a balance of power between the legislature and the government. There should always be some form of collaboration for input and feedback versus dictating rules, policies via mandates. Our community is already riddled with many issues due to COVID. Undue burdens placed upon our community should be addressed with some form of resolution. This bill is one form of a resolution. Guam individuals and businesses have suffered enough. Why put us through another cycle? We now have the discrimination between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, pitting one group against another. What is happening to our island? One people, one island. You, our senators, can set this right. Again, you are here to serve the greater good of our community. For Bill 176-36, I think it had good intent, but I think it's Johnny-come-lately bill, which again falls in the red tape category of bureaucracy. Governments should look out for the people in terms of mitigating any threats of disease and health threat by finding the cures. You know, other countries are actually looking at different forms of treatment versus just the vaccination, and they've proven to work. Why aren't we looking at it? Why aren't we focusing on these things? So the recent approval of Pfizer was many months after the drug was utilized by many states and countries. If we waited for final approval, where would the counts be many months later? Regardless, it is always an individual right and choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dueñas. We'll now hear from Patricia Babalta.
Hello, Senators. I humbly come before you as a wife and a stay-at-home mom of 7. I guess I'm considered vaccine hesitant, and I have every right to be. 4 out of my 7 children have experienced adverse reactions to their vaccines, and not just the run-of-the-mill side effects, but more severe than I didn't know may have been related to the vaccine from their baby wellness checkups. The recent one that opened my eyes and forced me to really dig deep into the vaccine world, where things didn't make sense and were not adding up, was last year when I gave birth in February, and it was the beginning time of lockdown, and we didn't see our pediatrician in a timely manner. My son was a jolly, happy baby, full of expression and happy to go to anyone, until we started going in for his baby wellness checkup and getting his routine vaccines for his age. The second and third round of his visit, his demeanor changed. He did a 360, and this lasted for weeks. When he started to become his normal self, it was time again for his next visit, and with more shots. He was cranky, unconsolable. He didn't want to go to anyone. And the last vaccine consisted with the DTaP. He suffered a febrile seizure. And at that time, the hospital was full of COVID. Things were uncertain, so I made the decision not to take him in and to wait it out. That night, I took him into the room and breastfed him, the only thing that was comforting for him, and to pray, and I was scared. I told my pediatrician about what happened at the next visit. I questioned vaccines, and at first, the questioning wasn't welcome. But we worked through it. It took some time, and thanks be to God, I feel now that our doctor is there for me and my children, not just treated like regular routine patients. So with this history, I am vaccine hesitant, but I'm not against vaccines. Flu shots were never mandated. My child's first grade class in 2018, more than half of them were out due to the flu, including the teacher who had the shot. And you know what? We survived. My child who didn't get the flu shot got sick too, but recovered faster, being back in class by the third day while others were out for a week. My 12-year-old son now cannot participate in soccer because he's not vaccinated from COVID. Also, I can't be on the outside field to watch my other little children play soccer because I am not vaccinated. They suggest that I waited in the car. Please help me to understand this absurdity. So why don't I just get the vaccine, people say? It's more than just that. This is white-collar bullying. This is not a war on pro or anti-vaccine, but a war on our free will, our freedom that our ancestors' blood and the blood still continuing to keep our country free, the blood that's in our soil against communist dictators that tried and have governed our island, and again is happening in different clothing from within. Slowly and discreetly robbing the people of Guam of their free will, pushing and coercing us to oblige to someone's agenda. We should not be forced or manipulated into getting a vaccine. This goes against humanity on so many levels. Even sinners have the free choice to choose their own sins. Do you know the suffering of the people? Not the lack of food or shelter, but more, to be silenced, ignored, seeing the repeated corruption and being hopeless. They feel it's not even worth fighting for anymore. Our leaders talk all day long about the death and health of this pandemic, while the people need so much more than that. Investigation of money laundering, big businesses not paying millions of taxes that belongs to Guam and letting them slide. But what about making Guam more sustainable, having legit farms or factory, taking care of our elders and our dilapidated schools? Mothers crying because they don't know the truth and they feel getting vaccinated and vaccinating their children, even against their morals and their motherly gut feeling, is the only way that they can live the privileged life of the vaccinated. Guam is the highest vaccinated place, and we are also the top hotspots. Are we being played as guinea pigs? Is Guam getting some kind of compensation from CDC of some sort? CDC and public health are there to provide information and give advice, not to tell us how to live our life. Keep them in their place and let people decide how they want to protect themselves and their family. This is getting out of hand. Why is the legislative branch made? Ultimately, to preserve the liberty of individual citizens and ensure the government doesn't abuse its power. How is it possible that I'm in a room full of well-educated and esteemed people, people that are looked up to, and yet here I am, a speck on the island, having to defend my right and contest why these rules and policies are absurd? I, along with, I'm sure, thousands, can't keep up with these bills and amendments, and to top it off, the language, which quite frankly can be deceitful. It sounds like it means one thing, but it actually means the opposite. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Where is this half-a-day spirit I keep hearing about? The possibility that insurance will not cover patients who choose to stay unvaccinated? If a person decides to get vaccinated or not, and both falls ill, you bet I'll be there for both and help them and their family, regardless how I feel about vaccine or my personal opinion. Because that is the half-a-day spirit. It's a spirit of Christianity, to take care of each other, to serve. And just like this legislature and the governor is there to serve the people of Guam, not dictate our lifestyle. We need to give the power back to the people, not this division and hatred towards one another with condemnation, to respect others and their choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vibalta. Julian Jansen.
Hello. I'm Julian Jansen. I'm submitting, I have actually two testimonies. I have one for Bill 180 and another for 176.
All right,
Is that okay?
please proceed, yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm Julian Jansen, and I'm submitting testimony on behalf of myself, not my employer or any other organization or individual. I'm providing testimony on Bill 180, which I strongly oppose. The bill amends on its face two provisions of the Emergency Powers Act, which was sponsored by Senators Eddie Baza Calvo, the late Tony Pinco, and Larry Kasperbauer, and provides for certain public health powers that are able to be exercised by the governor of Guam with the consent of the Guam legislature by not effectively ending the state of emergency. This bill, if enacted, would completely undermine the Health Emergency Powers Act, and would in effect be declaring an unconditional surrender of the people of Guam to COVID-19. The bill would completely dismantle all the mandatory public health measures that the government of Guam has put into place as a result of the pandemic. The bill would immediately cancel and prevent any mandatory orders for isolation or quarantine. The bill would immediately cancel and prevent the mandated use of masks in public spaces. The bill would immediately cancel and prevent the protection of public spaces which have been provided by temperature gauges at points of entry in businesses. The bill would immediately cancel and prevent the requirement for mandatory vaccination as it was implemented under Executive Order 2021-20. Passage of this bill would amply demonstrate that the Guam legislature is no longer a deliberative body. Passage of this bill would be a break with the three-branch system of government, as it involves the seizure of emergency power from the executive branch where it belongs to be most consistent with the intent of Section 6 of the Organic Act of Guam. In my opinion, on a plain reading of Section 29A of the Organic Act of Guam, this law may be invalid since it prohibits the governor from exercising powers to promulgate quarantine and sanitary regulations for the protection of Guam against the importation and spread of disease. The Supreme Court of Guam recently decided in favor of the governor with respect to the power of the executive branch on this matter in CRQ 22. The court stated that under the Organic Act, the position of the civilian governor mirrored its predecessor under the United States Navy and was given broad powers. The elected governor continued to enjoy broad executive powers. It is against this historical backdrop that we recognize the governor's exclusive power in 48 USCA, Section 1421GA. This section of the Organic Act, which specifically mandates the governor establish, maintain, and operate quarantine stations and promulgate quarantine regulations when necessary, has never been amended. The parties, which include the Guam legislature, do not dispute this is a unique grant of power specifically bestowed on the governor of Guam, but it is more than unique. It is a command of the Organic Act of ultimate responsibility to the governor, and that latter language is coming from Bordalia v. Baldwin from 1980. Reading sections 6 and 29A of the Organic Act of Guam together, a vision emerges, and that vision is 10 GCA Chapter 19, the Emergency Health Powers Act. The Guam legislature has wisely vested public health emergency powers within the executive, which is better able to handle day-to-day emergency conditions. We have seen case rates rise and fall during the current pandemic, and the governor and the public health authorities have responded quickly to developing conditions, much more quickly than the Guam legislature tends to, or in all honesty, should. The path this bill lays out is most consistent with that trod by the legislative executive committees of public safety established in England by Oliver Cromwell and in France by Maximilien Robespierre, not a properly functioning three-branch government. I urge this committee and the legislature to set this bill aside permanently.
Thank you.
And then I have my testimony on 176-36. I'm going to kind of fast forward through some of it because I don't want to take up too much time. One is that I just had noticed a few problems with the bill. It says that it's located in Title 11. It's actually Title 10. The bill inadvertently repeals the authorization for the public health authority to treat persons exposed to or infected with disease. The bill refers to vaccines as being unconditionally approved, but that designation does not exist. There's either conditional approval or full approval. And then finally, assuming that the bill were corrected, I believe that it wouldn't do what the author intends it to do. Rather than merely preventing the government of Guam from mandating vaccination, it would prevent the government of Guam from administering vaccinations during the public health emergency. Okay, now on my substance of the disagreement with the bill, in my most generous interpretation, the bill is intended to prohibit the government of Guam from requiring vaccination as a result of the public health emergency and any public health emergency in the future, regardless of how deadly or virulent, unless the vaccine has received full approval from the FDA. I would imagine a concern of the author might be that the emergency use authorization granted to some of the COVID-19 vaccines do not demonstrate that the vaccines are safe and effective. However, that's false. FDA has assured that the COVID-19 vaccinations have been tested to ensure their safety and efficacy before they were granted the EUA. In fact, the CDC has agreed that the vaccines that have received EUA are safe and effective, and has gone a step further by urging people to get a COVID-19 vaccination as soon as possible. Infection with the COVID-19 virus, particularly unvaccinated infection, is, believe it or not, harmful to the health and safety of individuals and members of our community. A byproduct of the infection is that it confers a level of immunity to a person who is infected. The idea that exposing individuals to unnecessarily high risk of infection and the negative health outcomes that come with that is an acceptable alternative to ensuring maximum vaccination is not only ludicrous, but morally wrong. Vaccination in general is very, very safe, and infection is much less safe. I've recently heard members of the community making perverse claims, including that mandatory vaccination is a challenge to people's constitutional rights or is in some way un-American. However, mandatory vaccination has been upheld by the US Supreme Court and other federal courts since 1905, when the Supreme Court gave its decision in Jacobson versus Massachusetts. In the syllabus of the case, the court opines, the liberty secured by the Constitution of the United States does not import an absolute right in each person to be at all times and in all circumstances fully free from restraint. The court also stated that it is within the police power of the state to enact a compulsory vaccination law, which in combination with the Emergency Health Powers Act and the executive order, we have somewhat done so. This precedent has been upheld to as recently as July, when the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld Indiana University's mandatory vaccination policy. Justice Amy Coney Barrett denied a request for emergency relief, which is evidence that the Supreme Court does not believe there is basis to overturn mandatory vaccinations imposed by state or local institutions. The idea that the mandatory vaccination is un-American is contrary to US history. During the Revolutionary War, there was a serious epidemic of smallpox in the American colonies. As a result, George Washington required his army to get inoculated against smallpox. Inoculation is involved with injecting infected tissue into the skin using a needle, which usually causes a milder infection, but confers a level of immunity against the disease. About this, Washington wrote, "Necessity not only authorizes, but seems to require the measure. For should disorder infect the army, we should have more to dread from it than from the sword of the enemy." The risks from COVID-19 are considerably smaller from smallpox, but the risks of vaccination compared to inoculation are astronomically smaller. Now, almost all states require vaccinations for chickenpox, diphtheria, Haemophilus influenzae type B, hepatitis B, measles, mumps, pertussis, polio, rubella, tetanus, and whooping cough. Most, if not all of these, are highly contagious diseases and can cause long-term illness, hospitalization, and/or death. This provides a strong rationale for mandatory vaccination, just as exists for COVID-19. In fact, the federal government now requires COVID-19 vaccination for its employees and contractors doing work for the federal government. And as I mentioned earlier, some state universities are requiring vaccination to attend in person, and it has been upheld in the courts. On Guam, the Emergency Health Powers Act, sponsored by Senators Calvo, Umpenko, and Casper Bauer, and also voted in favor of by Senator Joanne Salas Brown, conferred the authority on the executive branch to both administer vaccines and require them, allowing that the public health authority may exercise the following emergency powers over persons as necessary to address the public health emergency. Then goes on to specify, vaccinate persons as protection against infectious disease and to prevent the spread of contagious or possibly contagious disease. The text is written in such a way as to allow vaccination where that would not otherwise be authorized in law, and to also grant discretionary authority to compel vaccination. As I stated before, if this bill passed, it would even make non-compulsory vaccination with Moderna and Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines illegal. In brief, mandatory vaccinations are both legally authorized in Guam, constitutional, and as American as apple pie. I would also like to state that there's no good moral case for why mandatory vaccinate, or no good case for why vaccination is immoral. As I mentioned, vaccines provide a huge benefit to anyone who gets them, plus the benefit to their family and community, since evidence suggests that infection is less likely to occur and that there is likely a reduced period during which infected people are contagious. If you want to check anything I've said about health-related matters, by all means, I encourage you to look it up on the CDC website. As a long-held libertarian principle is that your right to, yes?
Yes, if you could conclude, please.
I don't have much longer.
Yes, please finish.
A long-held libertarian principle is that your right to swing your arms ends just where the other man's nose begins. Imposing unnecessary pain, suffering, and death in our community is where not getting vaccinated punches all of us in the nose. Many Christians will understand the moral difference between freedom and license to harm others. In a society, you have one, but not the other. Jesus of Nazareth is credited with having said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That is precisely what we do when we get vaccinated. We help those around us, and thankfully, it is also not a cost to ourselves, but largely a win-win. The principle which is embraced by those who think that no one has a duty to their community is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," as it was enunciated by Aleister Crowley, who some believe was the wickedest man in the world.
Please conclude.
Can I not be interrupted? It will only be a moment.
Please conclude, yeah. If you can wrap it up in a few seconds, yes, please do it.
If this bill is enacted, it seems that the moral principle our community has embraced will be changed from the model of Jesus of Nazareth to Aleister Crowley. As a final point, I would draw your attention to another law of Guam's books. It's found at 9 GCA chapter 19, section 19.40, and it's entitled Reckless Conduct. One of the provisions is that a person is guilty of reckless conduct if she recklessly engages in conduct which unjustifiably places or may place another in danger of death or serious bodily injury. If you are interested in asserting that people have the right to engage their freedom regardless of the consequences, then this is another provision that must be amended as well. And more to the point, we don't have that right, nor should we. I urge this committee and this legislature to do one of two things. Either set this bill aside and tell the entire community that all of us have the right to do whatever we want, regardless of the consequences to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jansen. We'll now hear from Mr. Eric Akwai.
Thank you, Senators. First of all, I'd like to thank you for making sure that the people are heard on this issue. My name is Eric Akwai, and my testimony is in favor of both of these bills. My mother is Remedios Meding Mesa Akwai, who worked for the Guam Police Department for many years until her retirement. Her mother is Maria Lukban Mesa, whose name can be found on the Martyrs Monument in Malesu. Because she spoke both English and Japanese, she was used by the Japanese soldiers as an interpreter, amongst other things, at the POW camp. Despite the dangers to herself, she did what she could to help the American prisoners. And because of that, she was repeatedly beaten, raped, and eventually beheaded for her patriotism. My grandmother was not a soldier. She was a school teacher. Yet, she made the ultimate sacrifice for standing up against oppression, injustice, and for all our rights. And I, for one, will not stand idly by and watch as those rights are taken away. There are many reasons why I choose not to get vaccinated, but due to the time restraints, I will give you the top 3 that many of my friends and family agree with. First and foremost is common sense. Since the beginning, I was being coerced to get the shots for my own safety. But I am not safe if I can still get the virus, am I? Next, I was told that it was our civic duty to protect the health of the population. But that was wrong too, because the vaccinated can and do transmit the virus. Then I was told to do it so I wouldn't get sick and overwhelm the hospitals. Well, the statistics have proven that reasoning to be inaccurate too. The excuses for getting vaccinated keep changing because the reasoning behind them doesn't stand up to the test of time. The truth is that the vaccines aren't very effective because they were developed and tested on and for the original virus, but the virus is mutating. The vaccines for all the most notable viruses in history worked because those viruses were stable. COVID is not stable. And then there are my religious beliefs. I'm not a Bible scholar, nor am I holier than the man or woman next to me, but I believe in God and His Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior. I believe the Bible is the Word of God as written through His chosen disciples. And the book of Revelations tells of many things that are seemingly coming to pass. Now, I may not know for sure that this is what is in the prophecies, but once I take that shot, I cannot take it back. It's irreversible. Therefore, my religious beliefs prevent me from getting any of these vaccines. Last and not least is my personal beliefs. Even before the initial COVID breakout, I was not comfortable with vaccines. I questioned what was in them and how they were developed. I read of baby fetuses being used in their research and development. So I stopped getting the flu shots a long time ago. And I still get sick once a year and I go home and my immune system takes care of that. And even after my daughter was born in 2019, I get into arguments with my wife about her getting her shots. I lose those arguments. I have lost all confidence that big pharma and big tech corporations have our well-being in their best interests. In fact, the opposite is true. Sick people make them more profits, much, much more. The gentleman who testified before me spat out a lot of laws and statistics, but the only thing that I really heard from him was that the vaccine was, in general, safe. I'm concerned more about the specifics. In closing, Senators, the bottom line is clear. The vaxxed and unvaxxed both transmit the virus. There is no need to segregate, discriminate, and there is no need for the mandate. Regardless of our vaccination status, we are all your people. This is the people's house, and you are our senators. We have elected you to fight for us, and we implore you to do whatever it takes to protect all of us against a governor who is clearly on a major power trip. And we pray to our Lord Jesus Christ that the balance of power is restored among our island's leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akwai. I'm going to ask now senators, I know that was a long panel, but if you have any questions, Senator Blas, for anyone on this panel. Again, we have 12 left. I counted it again, and there's still 12 left. Thank you.
No question, actually, just a comment. Thank you very much. There was very diverse, in as far as the testimonies here. And I appreciate, as this panel is impaneled here, we're here to hear the public. And here, just sitting in here, we heard 6 different reasons why we need to continue this fight. Thank you very much. Okay?
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Dueñas, questions for this panel?
Excuse me, Madam Speaker, and I've really enjoyed the diverse opinions and the strong testimony from the panel. Dr. Burton, I cannot miss this opportunity because a lot of people, and even on this panel, have been discussing the value of current treatments. And I think that's just far being ignored. Dr. Gwen, even in his personal capacity now, not being the PAG chair anymore, has been on the news talking and urging people to talk to their doctors once they know they're positive, to talk about Regeneron and other opportunities before they have any level of acuity. Do you think that should be much more prominent in terms of the discussion in our community of now transformative cures and things that are showing severe positive benefits in terms of, outside of the vaccines?
Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that. There are wonderful treatments currently available to manage even severe cases of COVID-19 after contracted and progressing in severity of symptoms. And we don't hear very much about that. And I'd like to pose the question also, why is that? Why do we only hear about draconian measures of lockdown, road closures, vaccine mandates, segregation, blaming, shaming? That's what we hear about from politicians. And I don't think that politics has any place in the practice of medicine. Now, when President Trump came down with COVID-19, he was whisked into Walter Reed Medical Center in Bethesda, and he was treated with a variety of wonderful agents. One was monoclonal antibodies that are infused intravenously. He was also treated with IV steroids. I believe it was most likely dexamethasone. This virus, when fatal, it most commonly kills because the host's immune system reacts so violently to it that a big cytokine storm, it's called, where certain white cells, lymphocytes, killer T cells among the lymphocyte group of white cells, go crazy. And all sorts of other immune activity, including destructive digestive enzymes, are released, and other immune system modalities that are meant to kill bacteria and viruses, but they end up killing the patient's lungs. And then they turned around and blamed hydroxychloroquine for that. Dishonestly and falsely, there was a completely bogus and dishonest study that came out of the VA hospital, a VA hospital in Virginia, where they only allowed the hydroxychloroquine to be given to those on death row who already had the cytokine storm, already had severe restrictive pulmonary disease and could not survive without a ventilator. And most of those people had a 99.9% chance of dying. And they gave hydroxychloroquine, and then to them only. They did not use it in a control group of people who came down with the early symptoms that did not require ventilatory support yet. Then they blamed the deaths on hydroxychloroquine. Now, why is that? A cheap, easily affordable medication that was being stockpiled in huge amounts among most of the states of the American Union. And then the decree comes out that it should not be used and it's dangerous. And there were other faulty studies. There's too much to report, but I appreciate your question. One quick thing I'd like to add is that we heard a lot about the dark moments in the history of the United States where other pestilences and epidemics such as smallpox had ravaged the population. And it's being used as an excuse now. Now, I must point out as a healthcare professional that COVID-19 does not and never will rise to the level of the danger and the devastation of smallpox. An individual exposed to smallpox had over 1,000 times more probability of dying, of fatality, compared to an individual exposed to COVID-19. There is no comparison, and that is one of the most lame and dishonest and disingenuous comparisons that I've ever heard. The same goes for yellow fever, the Spanish flu, and other such situations as that. And I know that there's that history, there's that moment in America's past where some people were mandatorily vaccinated, but that does not justify the use of emergency powers for an epidemic of this magnitude that we face today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for this panel? Please
I just have
make
one
them
quick
direct.
question, understanding, Madam Chair, that there are still others that are waiting outside to testify. But I wanted to ask Ms. Campos with regards to, just pointing out, I mean, all of us that are here tonight, and I know Senator Tello's on the Zoom, voted last Monday for the override of Senator Chris Dueñas' bill that actually would have allowed this level of engagement in making these type of policy decisions. And they're not here tonight. What are your thoughts on how that message can be facilitated? Because certainly without the additional support of our other colleagues, we were 2 votes short last Monday to override the governor's veto. And right now, for those of us here, it's like preaching to the choir because we pretty much concur with a lot of the sentiments that have been relayed of public testimony tonight. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to ask that the questions and testimony be limited to the 2 bills before us.
I understand, Madam Speaker, but it's in actually voting for these bills that I'm asking her input on.
Senator, Speaker Terlaje, I promise to make it quick. You know, there's a lot of people that if they could, they would be here, but there's a lot of fear in the community to stand up, to stick out. In my thoughts about the people that are not backing this up, I am praying that they look inside and figure out what the agenda is. Because we have over 80% of our population is already vaccinated, and God only knows what that's going to bring about. The rest of us that have chosen not to get it, I'm asking them to represent us as well. Because everybody in the legislature, once you get elected, you represent all of the people, not just the ones that got the vaccine, all of us. And all I could do right now is ask the community to pray for them, because I'm asking that they do the right thing. They will recognize the right thing if they would just pray on this. I believe that in my heart. And those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Campos. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senators. Senator Taitukui, do you have questions for this panel?
Not really, Madam Speaker, but I do like to thank everyone who is testifying, especially Dr. Burton for coming out. There's a lot of pressure out there, especially in your line of work. And I have to, give kudos to you for coming out and speaking up and have the courage to do so on your beliefs when there's so many other doctors out there who don't believe the way you do. So, stick to your gun. And if there's anything I could do to help, please let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I just want to remind everyone that today at the oversight hearing on public health and in the news, they have reminded us that they have finally rolled out the program for the Regeneron so that you will be referred. If you are tested positive at the testing site, you will be referred to a treatment site, which is right now at GRMC, and they're hoping to set up other ones with the help of HSS personnel who are coming to Guam to help them stand that up and set up more treatment sites. So yes, when we talk about the alternative treatments, there are some. And you can read about those in the news or watch the video of the oversight hearing with public health that occurred prior to this hearing. And thank you so much for all your testimony and for your patience tonight. Suzus Masi, be safe. And we're gonna hear from the next panel now, beginning with Carlos Pangilinan.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. My name is Carlos Pangilinan. I am an employee with the Department of Public Health and Social Services. I'm authorized to present testimony on behalf of my division, the Division of Public Welfare. Title 10 GCA Chapter 19, Article 6 provides special powers to the Department of Public Health and Social Services during a state of public health emergency. Our division oversees the Medicaid and medically indigent programs, which are amongst the largest payers of inpatient hospital services on Guam. Medicaid alone covers roughly 30% of all discharges at both Guam Memorial Hospital and the Guam Regional Medical City. Amending the law to mandate the use of only unconditionally approved vaccines by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration will prevent our department from DPHSS from administering the emergency use authorization vaccines. Whether EAU, and that's what the emergency use that's what it stands for, EAU, or unconditionally approved, these vaccines provide the best known tools we have to mitigate COVID-19 related hospitalizations and their associated costs to our health programs. Since December 11, 2020, the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine has been available under EAU in individuals 16 years of age and older, and the authorization was expanded to include those 12 through 15 years of age on May 10, 2021. The FDA's approval of this vaccine was made less than a week and a half ago, the full approval I'm talking about, and that was on August 23, 2021. Before then, all COVID-19 vaccines administered on Guam were under EAU status. While it is difficult to predict how Bill 176 would affect vaccination rates moving forward, perhaps one should consider the potential outcomes had proposals such as Bill 176 been enacted last year when the vaccinations were first rolled out. This measure may have prohibited any effort on the part of the government to encourage vaccinations in general. After all, there were no quote unquote fully approved vaccines. This conceivably would result in more hospitalizations than you see today and greater costs to the Medicaid and MIP programs, exhausting resources that would have otherwise been used to pay for Guam's already high disease burden. We believe that drugs or vaccines during a public health emergency, whether they are conditional or unconditionally approved by US FDA or EUA products, must be allowed if the known and potential benefits of the products outweighs its known and potential risks when used to treat or prevent a serious illness, provided the individual patient is given an option to accept or refuse the administration of the drug or vaccine. For the various reasons I've stated above, I respectfully stand in opposition of Bill 176. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pangilinan. We'll now hear from Attorney Jackie Terlaje.
Afade, Senator Terlaje, Senators, Wahusi Jacqueline Taitino Terlaje, Sidus Masi for permitting me to testify today. I'm a wife and a mother. I'm also a daughter of 4 elderly parents. While I'm also the president of the Guam Bar Association, I want to be clear that my testimony is my personal testimony and does not reflect the opinions of my membership, nor am I here today in any paid capacity. I'm simply a citizen of Guam exercising my rights to testify before this legislature. I support the intention of Bills 18036 and Bill 17636, but I am submitting this testimony in opposition to those bills. I simply do not support mandatory vaccination of persons, nor do I support the quarantine of individuals without constitutional guideline or prescription. My primary objection is that the circumstances of this mandatory vaccination removes my right to choose and is being replaced with misplaced paternalism. The unintended effect of these bills would grant statutory authority to vaccinate more than 40,000 of Guam's children. Neither the governor of Guam nor a public health authority should have the right to interfere in my parental rights to decide the best for my children. As a mother, I make decisions in communion with my husband, with medical advice of our doctors, and with the discernment of God's will for our family. I would offer a simple fact that happened to me in 2019. My son in the womb at 10 weeks was diagnosed with cystic hygroma. It's a type of cancer, and it was advised that we should consider abortion. After discerning the will of God and the advice of our doctors, we chose life. Our son was born healthy and free of cancer. The same must be said about mandatory vaccination. Neither the governor nor public health can replace this type of decision-making for my children. The governor nor public health act in the best interest of my children. And because I will not permit the governor to vaccinate my children against our religious and moral beliefs, is the government prepared to terminate my parental rights? And shouldn't the government be compelled to terminate my parental rights before they vaccinate my children against my will? Are we prepared to subject our system to these types of actions? While I recognize that these bills are an attempt by our legislature to perhaps provide some restriction and guidelines on the powers of the governor, the Supreme Court of Guam has made it very clear that the powers of our Magahaga are the same as an 1898 naval governor. This was found in the most recent Supreme Court opinion in 2021 Guam 6. If you recall the history of Guam, in 1898, the people of Guam were simply incidental captures to war. And according to the United States Supreme Court insular cases, they were mere savages. Only until 1968 were the citizens of Guam granted some semblance of authority. However, as it relates to this public pandemic health emergency, at the request of Guam's first female Chamorro governor, the Supreme Court of Guam held that as a result of the acts and omissions of both the US Congress and the Senate, the Magahaga holds the powers of essentially a military dictator, a military governor holding all legislative, executive, and judicial authority. I was born on Guam and raised an American citizen. I was told that I have the same rights as every other citizen of the United States. As an attorney, I have taken an oath to uphold the United States Constitution. But as I get older and the longer I practice law in Guam, I realize that the rights and remedies afforded to our territorial citizens is affected by people who know nothing about Guam, by people who believe that our island would tip over with more people on it, or that military personnel are the only US citizens living in Guam. I firmly believe that no single person on Guam or in the United States within the confines of our constitutional rights guaranteed to all US citizens should be made by a lone military dictator. This is essentially where I believe that the Organic Act has left us territorial citizens unprotected. I have every confidence that any act by this legislature would result in another lawsuit to protect the rights of our 1898 military naval governor. Mandatory vaccination is necessary, according to some, because it's the right and privilege to fully participate in society, kind of like a driver's license. This kind of mentality causes me great concern of the acquiescence of many members who are so willing to waive our rights. I don't know any license on Guam that forces upon me to be regularly inoculated with medication. Some compare an inoculation to a flu shot. I'm not mandated to take a flu shot or other vaccines. Where vaccines are required, Guam law provides exceptions. The only exemption allowed is public health mandated isolation without due process. That is the only exception allowed under the current law, under the proposed statutory provisions of these bills. Senator Blas, you asked about public health's position on booster shots, and your instinct is correct. The governor will not only mandate first shots, but will mandate boosters. And these bills would grant public health the statutory duty to impose vaccination against the will of every individual. What's next? Diabetes, heart attacks, and obesity? These are very big problems on our island. Should we segregate and prohibit individuals who are diabetic or overweight from eating on our restaurants? Should we install blood sugar monitors, maybe some weight scales and BMI calipers, in addition to temperature gauges outside of every business? Many people too say that I have too many children. I have 9 children. If the government determines that I shouldn't have more children, should they be permitted to sterilize me because it's part of my privilege to participate in society? What happened to my
Attorney Terlaje, if you could please conclude. Sure. Please conclude.
Thank you. Senators, I am simply asking you, as our elected officials, to support the protection of our community, the person's right to choose, the right to determine the best for their children, the right of persons who are not medically qualified, protect the rights of those who have religious exemptions, protect employees from discrimination, protect our people from lone military dictator by seeking a modification to the Organic Act. That is the only way that our legislature can protect us, not by bills that can be overturned by our Supreme Court of Guam. I thank you for the time. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi. We'll now hear from Ruby Rosano.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. My name is Ruby Rosano. I reside in Talofofo, Guam. And I am here in regard to our governor's heavy-handed use of her emergency powers. The Organic Act of Guam was signed into law by President Truman on the 1st of August, 1950, to protect the people of Guam from autocratic rule, to protect our rights and liberties and ensure our participation in democracy, and to protect from discrimination. It has been disheartening to see the governor cite the same act that was intended to protect the people of Guam against the people of Guam. This is the 3rd school year affected. Having our children bubbled for the last 1.8 years has deprived them from building natural immune responses. This does not just apply to COVID, but colds and the flu, also leaving children vulnerable to conditions that leave them less able to fight off the COVID infection successfully. Shutting down our schools is depriving our children of a quality education and putting their mental and physical health at risk. Childhood obesity has greatly increased within the lockdowns and is contributing to one of the major comorbidities that endangers their lives. Our children are at higher risk from dying from suicide, car accidents, or homicide. The governor's "an abundance of caution" approach is, in fact, the thing that is putting our children at risk. Just as virulent as the virus is the fear, hate, discrimination, and division that has infected our hearts and minds. In one breath, we say, "I respect your right to choose," and in the next breath, "You must submit for the greater good." This is hyperventilated hypocrisy. The governor strongly encouraging businesses and those hosting events to require vaccination by way of inflicting punitive fines to both citizens and business owners, adds undue hardship to an already difficult situation, especially in light of both vaccinated and unvaccinated can transmit and become ill with the virus. The President of the United States and his press secretary had noticed that this does not pass constitutional muster and has stated in a press briefing in April of 2021, "Let me be clear on this. I know there's been a lot of questions," Paskey said during the press briefing Tuesday. "The government is not now, nor will be, supporting a system that requires Americans to carry a credential." Paskey went on to say that there will be no federal vaccination databases and no federal mandate requiring anyone to obtain a single vaccination credential. There's a quote, "None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free." Any dissenting opinions, thoughts, ideas are deemed politicizing. We have seen scientists, doctors, microbiologists, and numerous others censored or contained, whose education, credentials, and experience are just as esteemed as the state-sanctioned science. Yes, people have been vaccinated for a century. However, we have a century of data to study the long-term effects. The intentional omission of this argument is that it is entirely new technology with no long-term studies. When a government, under the guise of the greater good, is granted the power to enforce social isolation or else sow the seeds of fear and suspicion amongst friends and neighbors, they become rulers, not governors. John Stuart Mill once said, "The only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others or theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. Each is the proper guardian of his own health, whether bodily or mental or spiritual." I understand the concept of breaking a few eggs to make an omelet. However, I am not willing to offer my child or my family up as an egg for the greater good. Science and technology has rapidly advanced. For good or bad, it has not always come by way of ethical, moral, or altruistic means. They say good and evil are the opposite ends of a circle. Politics and profit are now motivating factors. One forgets that in the case of the polio vaccine, in an attempt to make it bigger, better, and more profitable, it ended up being worse.
Please conclude.
As all things evolve, we must strive to do better. We must stand on the side of freedom and liberty. Every person should have the right to decide for themselves if they want to participate in a trial and error experiment. Just one more thing. 20 years ago, the World Trade Center fell on top of my father-in-law's head. He was in the Marriott Hotel. He survived that and then went on to defend the same terrorists that tried to kill him at Guantanamo Bay. We were all asked him, why would you do that? He said because he firmly believed in the Constitution that everybody deserved equal defense under the law. I am here because I also remember something else. The Patriot Act. Out of fear, we gave up our rights and some of our rights and freedoms out of fear. I'm here 20 years later because I am here fighting for the Constitution and the rights and freedoms of our children so we don't repeat the mistake. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I am a constitutionalist.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rosano. All right, we're going to have to take a break. I apologize. The audio is telling us we need to take a break and they have to reset it. So it'll take us about 5 minutes, all right? So please, you're free to stretch your legs. 5 minutes, we're going to take a recess. Thank you.